हाँ जी, वार जी का खालसा, वार जी का फतेह दोस्तों, सत्करतार, very good evening, buonasera Italia. This is Bhai Baldeep Singh. Um, we are in for the 107th virtual Baiṭhak of the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series. It is my pleasure to be in conversation today with conductor Andrea Vitello. Let me get these. Okay, even this one off. See, Andrea Vitello is one of the finest Italian conductors, who is a leasing conductor of the younger generation. Vitello won the international prominence and critical acclaim for his 2017 I Solisti della Scala for Warner Classics. He has conducted across the world as for the Budapest Symphony Orchestra MAV, Italy's Orchestra Sinfonica di Sanremo, and Orchestra da Camera Fiorentina, and the Lomza Philharmonic Orchestra in Poland. Vitello has also conducted for the Nice Philharmonic Orchestra, Plovdic Opera in Greece, Russia's Khabarovsk Philharmonic Orchestra, and at New York City's Carnegie Hall. His concert programs and recorded albums display interpretive sensitivity and a daring willingness to pair classic repertoire from Stravinsky, Debussy, and Baiṭhak alongside work from more contemporary composers including Peter Yorkwas and Tamas Vasari. He is a two-time recipient of the 5 Stars Award from Musica Magazine and a regular jury member at international conducting competitions including the European Union Conducting Competition, the Almaty International Competition for Conductors, and the Giancarlo Facchinetti Competition for Contemporary Music. Vitello has already published himself as a driven interpreter of and ambassador for lesser-known Italian composers of the late 19th to early 20th centuries, including Giovanni Sgambati and Giuseppe Martucci. I am looking forward to being in conversation with him, especially to understand what is it to be a conductor. I mean, who's a conductor? It's been sort of an enigma for me personally. I've enjoyed the work. We've had Zubin Mehta's. We've contributed to the top league of conductors in the history of 20th century Western music. Anyway, let me share a couple of introductory notes with my compatriots from Punjab and Punjabis across the world. Satkartar dosto, Assalamu alaikum, namaskar, te बहुत खुशी है तुसीं जुड़े हो। 107वां मेला है YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series ਦਾ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਰਪਿਤ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਯਾਦ ਮਨਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ 550ਵਾਂ ਜਨਮ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਦਿਹਾੜਾ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਉਤਸਵ ਮਨਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਛੋਟਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਹੈ। ਮੇਰੀ ਅੱਜ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬੜੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੈ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਉਭਰਦੇ ਜਾਂ ਇਹ ਉਭਰ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਹੈ। ਅੰਦਰਿਆ ਵਿਤੈਲੋ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਖੱਟ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਇਟਲੀ ਦਾ ਲੀਜ਼ਿੰਗ ਕੰਡਕਟਰ ਹੈ ਨਵੀਂ ਪੀੜ੍ਹੀ ਚੋਂ, ਔਰ ਇਹਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਮ ਨਾ ਖੱਟ ਲਿਆ ਹੈ। 2017 ਵਿੱਚ ਈ ਸੋਲਿਸਟੀ ਡੈਲਾ ਸਕਾਲਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਹੀਏ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਾਫੀ ਸਰਾਹਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਕੰਮ। ਔਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ 'ਚ ਫਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਵਾਰਨਰ ਕਲਾਸਿਕਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸੀਗਾ, ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ 'ਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੰਡਕਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਪੂਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਬੁਡਾਪੈਸਟ ਸਿੰਫਨੀ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ MAV ਕਰਕੇ ਹੈ, ਇਟਲੀ ਦਾ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਸਿੰਫੋਨੀਕਾ ਦੀ ਸਨਰੇਮੋ ਹੈ, ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਦਾ ਕਾਮੇਰਾ ਫਿਓਰੈਂਟੀਨਾ ਦਾ ਹੈ, ਲੋਮਜ਼ਾ ਫਿਲਾਰਮੋਨਿਕ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਪੋਲੈਂਡ ਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਕਾਫੀ ਥਾਵਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਇਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਕਾਰਜ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਨੇ। ਔਰ ਫਿਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਪਲੋਵਡਿਕ ਓਪਰਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਗ੍ਰੀਸ ਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ, ਨੀਸ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਫਿਲਾਰਮੋਨਿਕ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ, ਲੋਮਜ਼ਾ ਫਿਲਾਰਮੋਨਿਕ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਪੋਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਰੂਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਾਬਰੋਵਸਕ ਫਿਲਾਰਮੋਨਿਕ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਹੈ। ਨਿਊਯਾਰਕ ਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨੇਗੀ ਹਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ, ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਥਾਨ ਹੈ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਦਾ। मैं उत्थे सुन चुकिया जोड़ी सवाल ते इवन अपने दोस्त दाऊद खान सादोज़ाई ने पिछले साल उत्थे वजाया सा तो मैं उत्थे ही सी ते इन्हां दे काफ़ी वड्डे स्थानां ते ये परफॉर्म कर चुके ने। मैं दरअसल ला रहा सी कि उन्हां दा कनैक्शन टुट गया सी, मैं सोचा कि उन्हां नूं मैं फिर तो लगा ला, हले वो आए नहीं है, डजंट मैटर, मैं तद ताईं जारी रखांगा। और एक दो गल्लां होर दस दियां कि इन्हां दे ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਲਿਖਿਆ, ਸਵਿੰਸਕੀ, ਡੈਬੂਸੀ ਤੇ ਬਾਰਟੋਕ ਵਰਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰਸ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਦੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੀਟਰ ਇਟਵਾਸ ਐਂਡ ਥਮਾਸ ਵਸਰੀ ਜਾਣੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਹੈ ਬਹੁਤ ਉਹ ਸਰਾਹਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ 2 ਵਾਰ 5 ਸਟਾਰ ਅਵਾਰਡ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੂਸਿਕਾ ਮੈਗਜ਼ੀਨ ਦਾ, ਔਰ ਇਹ ਆਮ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਜੂਰੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਹਨਗੇ ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਕਈ ਕੰਡਕਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਯੂਰਪੀਅਨ ਯੂਨੀਅਨ ਦਾ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਡਕਟਿੰਗ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਲਮਾਤੀ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੁਕਾਬਲਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕੰਡਕਟਰਸ ਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਔਰ ਜਾਨਕਾਰਲੋ ਫਾਕਿਨੇਤੀ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਉਹਦੇ ਜੂਰੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਹਨਗੇ। ਔਰ ਇਹ ਵਿਟੈਲੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅੰਦਰਿਆ ਵਿਟੈਲੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ 19ਵੀਂ ਸ਼ਤਾਬਦੀ ਦੇ ਅਖੀਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰ 20ਵੀਂ ਸ਼ਤਾਬਦੀ 20th ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ अर्ली ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰਸ ਹਨਗੇ, ਜਵਾਨੀ ਸਕਾਂਬਾਤੀ ਤੇ ਜੁਸੈਪੇ ਮਾਰਤੂਚੀ ਵਰਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਿਦਵਾਨ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰਸ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਾਣੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਏ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਾਫੀ ਸਰਾਹਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਜਾਗਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਨੂੰ। ਮੈਂ ਆਂਦਰਿਆ ਹੁਣੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜ ਗਏ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਔਕਟੇਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਫਿਲਮ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਚਾਹਨਾ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਨੰਦ ਮਾਣੀਏ। 6-7 ਮਿੰਟ ਦੀ ਹੈ, ਕਾਬਿਲੇ ਗੌਰ ਹੈ। So here we are. Andrea, benvenuti. Welcome to the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to meet you.
Yeah. And I see it's a wonderful day in Italia.
Yes, it is indeed.
And you're not too far from Bologna, is it?
No, I'm 45 minutes from Bologna. I'm on the mountains, very close to Bologna.
Okay. And so this was a fantastic work. I enjoyed it the other day when I saw it, the octet, and I really wanted to begin. There were some technical issues. I was confused because I was not able to hear the audio, but everybody else was, which is odd. But anyway, I've been able to, they've been able to, I had to redo it. I think by 3 minutes or 4 minutes, I had to restart the video, and my apologies for that. But this was done by two Neapolitans in Napoli, is it?
Yes, yes, they are the guys that run Camera Music, which is a film producing company. They are both, one is a very good musician also, is Duilio Meucci is his name. He's a very good guitarist also. So, you know, when you're a musician shooting a film on musicians, you have a different point of view. So it was very interesting to work with them. And Ceppe Pasciano, which is the second guy, is the genius of sci-fi effects, you know, so the genius of post-production. So he made all the animations.
I thought you were actually doing magic.
Yeah, something like that. That's Ceppe's magic, not mine, but...
So yeah. Now you're disappointing me. I thought I was meeting a magician and not a musician.
I am, but I just need some guests, you know, to perform.
Yes, that's true. And I mean, you know, your field, I've watched some of the top, I mean, I've watched operas, I've watched orchestras perform. You know, we've had many here in India, of course, around the world, in Europe and in North Americas. What is it? I mean, who are you? I mean, in Punjab, on a naughty note, on a naughty note rather, if I were to tell anyone in Punjab, in my region, that I am in conversation with a conductor, the thing they will think is, what, a bus conductor? What are you talking? So on a yes. On a naughty note, would that be because the idea of the other conductor they know is the creator, God, that who conducts all the world, the whole cosmos is the conductor. The creator is the conductor. These are the two conductors my people would know. What is the role of the conductor in a musical performance?
Well, it's a very, very interesting question. You know, I don't have very, very clear what exactly I do when I conduct, but the role is to keep people together and to, you know, to give life, if I can say like that, to give sound to a score. So in some way you are the mind between the score, the composer, which is usually this, unfortunately, because today we perform 90% old music, you know, and between the composer and the audience. So it's a sort of medium, a sort of, a medium maybe.
I see. You're a medium. That was interesting that you said that most of the music is old. Now that can become quite challenging because it's a matter of a performance which is repeated, quote unquote repeated, but by different people, different orchestras, different musicians and their interpretations. And when it is to do with an interpretation, how does the musician sort of look at the conductor? And there are like 100 people or 50 people, 40 people, 8 different ensembles. They can be different sizes. How do they, what is it that they are to do when they're on stage? You're there like this. I'm alien to that. So I want this to be sort of an introduction to me as a layperson. It's the first time I'm in conversation like this with a conductor publicly. So I would rather ask the simplest of questions to melt the ice.
Sure.
If I'm
sure. Well, okay, so I know you are a very, very refined and cultured musician, so you know very well what I'm doing. But I mean, for the audience who is not into music, I think that the best thing is to think like this. When you are a conductor, a freelance conductor like me, you are a guy that goes, I don't know, for example, in 1 month I will be in Sofia. You go with this orchestra, you say there are 4 days, you have a 1 day rehearsal, then second rehearsal, and then I mean, you have time to meet the orchestra, to build these pieces together. You have also often a soloist. So a soloist means you have a very strong personality who has his own ideas, of course. Also the orchestra, that the most prestigious, the better is the orchestra, the more important there will be their ideas. There will be strong ideas and strong traditions. So the first things you do, you arrive there, you just begin to conduct, you play something together, and both you and them, like smell, you smell the people. So you understand, I mean, if everything works in 15 minutes, you understand what you will be able to do in the next 4 days, and they understand what you will be able to do. So this is how it begins. And then, you melt all the pieces like a chef, you have the spice, you have the honey, you have some wine to put into the pasta, for example, and then you melt everything, and in the end, you have the final dish. And the thing that you do with your hands is important, because with your hands you transmit your will to the people, because you usually don't speak much. Musicians don't like to listen to a conductor to speak. They want to play. They're supposed to play. So it's, unless you have something very important to say. But the gesture is something very personal, I think. There is a technique, there is something that's standardized in like solfeggio. We know 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. But this is very personal. The most important thing is to have a strong idea and to be able to bring all these people together. There can be a lot, you said. 100 people is a big symphony orchestra, and it happens to bring these people together to a common result.
And is there a class involved? Is the conductor, how are they the bosses, the gods within the musical?
I don't believe in bosses. I mean, of course there must be a boss, and there must be someone that decides what to do. Otherwise, nothing works. So in this way, the conductor is like the director of a movie. You have to decide when to begin, when to stop, what to rehearse, what to shoot, what to do. But then you have human beings on the other side. So it's always, a matter of finding a good compromise between what you want and what you can achieve. So it's, you are on some aspects you are the boss, because you decide a lot of things. But for many other aspects, you have in the orchestra, for example, the concertmeister, the principals, who are often very, very, very refined musicians. I remember playing with La Scala. I remember one episode with the first clarinet of La Scala, when we made this CD with octet together. I mean, he's a really, really, really good performer. So we were rehearsing something, and I said once one passage was not like we wanted. So I said, Fabrizio, you want to do it slower once? He looked at me and said, no, maestro, no need. It was really something difficult. The second time, perfect. So when you have musicians like this, you have to accept what they can do, because they can do 99%. You just have to transmit your idea, and if they are willing to get your idea, everything works fine. When you have other problems, like intonation problems or technical problems, it happens because often the music is very difficult and you have not much time to rehearse. In that case, you have to deal with other aspects. You have to know how to rehearse a piece, for example, and to know something about the technique of the instruments. Okay, you don't have to be able to play everything, but to know how to use a bow, this is, of course, very important. So there are many aspects. Yeah. So there is a boss, but there are also many bosses in each field of the orchestra.
Oh, I see. who are the other bosses? There are people
Yeah,
who
first
are
of all,
heads of every section. Let's say there's a
yeah,
so the
the
first
first violin, for
violinist.
example.
Okay,
Yeah,
continue. Tell us in your words. Yeah.
yeah. You see, when you see the orchestra, usually we have we always have the strings just near the conductor. You can have the first violins and second. There are many different positions, but you have the strings. So the first violin and the first cello, these are the most important people that you have very near, because the concertmeister, the first violin usually is the one that leads the whole string section. Also, the first cello is very important because he cares of the basses. So what you shall try to achieve is to have a good contact with the principals that you have really near to you, because it's not easy to have a good contact with the last one in the rows, but still you have to take care of everyone. So these are the principals, and then also the winds. You have, for example, the first flute, the first clarinet, oboe, bassoon, and so on, the first trumpet, trombone, the horn, very important. And everyone has, in each section there are humans, so there is one leading guy, and usually this leading guy shall be the principal. If he is not, it can be a problem. This can be a problem because the principal has the authority to, is paid more, and he has more authority of the others. So when there is someone who is more as character, as personality, is more leading than the principal, it is a problem, but it doesn't happen often.
Now, in terms of interpretation, usually, of course, the orchestras are there. They are people who have been playing something together. Let's take a symphony of anybody, maybe Beethoven's or Verdi, any piece that you may have to play. Let's say you get called. So usually these are orchestra with musicians who have been playing together often, or they're also freelance musicians who get called in, or you get a choice if you're in a certain city to be able to audition people and whom you want, or there are, how does it work?
As a freelance conductor like me, I don't have the power to hire people for a particular performance. You go into an orchestra and you find more or less a stable group of people that play together, hopefully for a long time. But then there is, in an orchestra is like a big company. You have 100 or 200 people that work for the company. Not every day together, but there is a turn, and there is younger people that come in when the older people retire. So, but more or less, you have an organism which is made by the conductor. I mean, you have a sound, a specific a way they play phrases, an education that they already have. So you have to deal with this.
I see. I have seen, for example, Philip, who was the first soloist, violinist of the Paris Philharmonic Orchestra. It was in 2001, when I was in Paris to do with the bows and etc. And I'd made a violin, actually, a copy of Stradivari's under my very dear friend Paul Hart. Yeah. In fact, when we show the next piece, I might just go down and bring the violin to show you from here, of course. Paul Hart is one of the top American, and Raffin, the bow maker, Raffin from Paris, his daughter was the one who assessed that. It was assessed very highly. In 2001, I think they called it something like 15.5 or 16,000 euros worth violin. But of course, it was jointly made by me and under the guidance of Paul Hart, who put the joints and then did the polishing, because I had to leave, I had to teach. And I made the structure of the body in 9 days, days and nights. Like, this is how I work. So people couldn't believe, but this is how I work. 18 to 21 hours in a day. I worked for 9 days. On the 7th day, Paul said, I cannot keep up. I have to sleep now. You're mad. This was in Utah, in the United States, and we used 100-year-old spruce and wood and all that. So I, of course, had to get a bow, and I went to my friend Dominique de Villencourt, the cellist. He has a 1752 cello as well. He has already been in conversation with me in the early Baiṭhaks. And we go a long way back, 5 years. And what I saw, the reason I'm giving you this introduction is that I was doing photography, and I wanted that violin to be tested. So Dominique said Philippe is the best, he's the first violinist of the Paris Philharmonic Orchestra, and he also was a colleague teaching at the Conservatory of Paris. So I went, Dominique had a class, so he went, took me there, he had his class of cello, and Philippe was there. Philippe already knew I would be coming, so I had my camera on, and then he played the violin, and I recorded that when he was playing, and it was quite an experience. It was the first time I had made a violin, and but of course, me being a master luthier so it was not just the first violin. It's not it was assessed very highly. And Philip said, "Oh, I don't know. This is a great violin. This has harmonics. The wing. In fact, Paul noted the wood number because because of the sound that it travels back. Oh, this wood works." So it was noted, and he said, "Oh, I didn't." He thought maybe I wanted to sell it to something. He said, "I can pay 17,500 euros." I said, "No. You like it? Put it back in the box. It's for another master who's lived in anonymity in India." It was Maharaj Thakur Singh, for whom I handcrafted the violin in 2001. Now, what I saw Philip tell, he had one student coming after another. I was there for a couple of hours. I saw two students in class. One was already in class, and the other one came in front of me. No conversation, open up the page, the score, and he was telling in between. So there's music that is written, but then there is music that he's telling which is not written. So he's telling, well, it's not like that, the note goes like this. It is actually how you approach the melody line. They were all talking French, so I speak a bit of Italian. But I'm trying to evoke that memory of mine to ask you that you have so many musicians on stage when you are about to conduct an orchestra, and they all have had their own education in terms of playing a certain piece. And I know that even from luthiery, there's a Bolognese tradition is different, Florence tradition is different, Milanese is different, Neapolitan instrument making tradition is different, Paris, they're all different schools. Likewise, playing schools are different. It could be a Mozart played by the Paris Philharmonic would be, an entirely different color than what you would be doing, let's say, in Florence or in Venice. How do you, especially, if there's a conductor who's there for 2, 3, 4, 5 months or for years, it would be a different answer from them, and I may not be able to ask them this question. But because you are a freelance conductor, where you get in and out of orchestras, often, how do you look at how do your ears react? Do you see multiple colors already there, and you're also trying to bring them in? You're trying to tune them to one particular intent that is your intent. You're tuning them all to that space, etc. How does it work? And I don't know if that's even a question. It's a horrible question. I apologize.
It's very interesting. Thank you for asking me. It's very interesting because the sound of an orchestra is made by the principal conductor. So, for example, if you go to the Philharmonie de Paris under Myung Chung or under Daniele Gatti, they have a different sound. And when I never conducted them, but when you go in such a prestigious orchestra, you cannot change radically the way they play. That doesn't make any sense. You are the guest, they are not the guests. So you have to achieve the best from that kind of sound. But a lot depends on what kind of program you propose. For example, we know that in Italy we have a way of playing which is very peculiar. The way of phrasing is very peculiar to Italy. I work a lot in the Eastern Europe from Hungary. It's not technically Eastern Europe, but Hungary, Bulgaria, Russia, and they play in a very different way. technically, they have a different school, especially for the strings.
I see.
So if you bring, for example, Italian music there, you have to, if they are not used to the kind of phrasing you intend to do, you have to explain, you have to achieve your result. But for example, if you do Tchaikovsky in Moscow, you cannot just go there and change. It will not work. Even if you have the best ideas in the world. You know, Bernstein had a huge discussion with the Wiener Philharmoniker for the recordings of Mahler symphonies. But okay, he was Bernstein. He was in his maturity. It worked. So if a guy like me as a guest conductor goes to Wiener Philharmonic and says, okay, this is not good, let's do a different way, I go home in 50 minutes, you know. So I have to find another way. I have to bring them, to take them by hand, and pace by pace, let them turn the corner and make them discover a new beautiful world, hopefully. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. But one trick for me is to do new music. Because you know, I like very much to do new pieces. For example, I was in Turkey, in Ankara, in January. I made two very beautiful concerts with our common friend Roberto Proceda. Also, we did Schumann together, the concerto. Yeah, but I also did a symphony by Giovanni Sgambati, who I think maybe nobody of our audience knows Giovanni Sgambati, because he was a composer from the 19th century, an Italian. He was a very, very good pianist. He was a pupil of Franz Liszt. He was recommended he was a protege of Richard Wagner, whom he introduced to Schott, the editor. And there is a letter of Schott, the chief of the Schott editions, who talks about Sgambati like the most important composer in Europe at that time. I mean, he's really good. He has 3 very beautiful symphonies, and there is a conductor whom I know is Francesco Attardi, who discovered the second and the third symphonies, and he published for Sovini Zerboni, I think, now in Italy. There's very, very beautiful music, not often performed. So what I did, I brought this symphony. Nobody knew that symphony. It's very difficult to play, so it's very demanding technically. Mm-hmm. But, you know, basically I could do what I wanted without any question. You know, there is no question, oh, maestro, but I always do like this. Why you make me do like this? So nobody was asking, and I put my bowings, and okay. So this is a trick for conductors. Bring new music. Also for the audience, if they don't know it, maybe they will appreciate it. I don't know. But when you do repertoire, it's very difficult to, you know, to change the customs of the people, also of the audience. Because if you, for example, you do opera. Yesterday I was in Ravenna to attend to Maestro Muti's. He has an opera academy in Ravenna. He was invited by some friends, so I went. And Maestro Muti was speaking about his first experience at La Scala, and how he struggled with singers to make that sing like it is written, no? Not to add high notes or strange things or unnecessary cadenzas but this is very difficult because, you know, tradition is very strong, not only with the performers, also with the audience. So when you are a young conductor like me, that you know, I'm doing my job, but every time I do a concert, I have to decide what to do. When you do something that will sound very strange, even if it's good, you risk. I mean, you risk the critic that will discard you as not good. So, you know, it's very risky. This is a risk that with the new music you don't have. You have different risks. But for me, it's much more interesting to have a confrontation with the composers than with the attitude and the how you say attitude in English? What the audience is used to. You know, this is not very interesting to me.
Yeah. The habit, yeah. The
habit. Yeah, you know, because you cannot change on a habit, and it's not even right. I mean, if they like this, okay. I'm the guy in my musical world and the guy that does strange things. So, yeah, this I like.
Right. And the very interesting what you've shared, that if you are just to underscore what you've just shared, is that the pieces that are normally played by the big orchestras or even smaller orchestras, the margin of what you can do as a conductor is very little. But then,
well, not very little, but there is something that you have to accept as it is. Then you have a margin, but there is something that you have to accept.
No doubt about that. But because these are orchestras which are established, and they would not be totally wrong in that sense. They would be somewhere near there, and then you have to do those fine trimming. You're more like a trimmer rather than a drastic. Like in flying, we have the rudder and the big flaps which change, but then there are trimmers, small trim here, small trim here, to make sure they are maintaining the course if there is a wind, etc. So I understand. It is good that we are, in fact, it's not just about my understanding, but so that everybody who listens to our conversation is also able to see what I'm trying to ask, and of course your narration. The margin, of course, is not, as you said, that you cannot make drastic changes. But of course, the quality of musicianship is already guaranteed in a way, that you will be meeting with some of the finest musicians in that city, or who are roped in by the orchestra, by the company that handles that part. But something that caught my eye or my ear is when you say that when you go, you would rather take a composer who's less known, because then you are totally in control. You're also teaching them about how to interpret. It's like you're taking them into the conservatory. So
you know.
That's a very interesting methodology.
The point is, when I go to one orchestra, even a very good orchestra, and I have the quite luck to work with good orchestras. When I bring a new piece, contemporary music maybe, or a piece that they don't never heard, I am the biggest expert on that piece in that room. That's for sure. So,
it changes the dynamic.
It changes the dynamics, yes.
Before you have the egos, now you have the ears.
Yes, you save a lot of time, because in order to convince an orchestra to do what you want with a repertoire piece, you struggle one rehearsal, one day of work, only to smell one and the other. Then they say, okay, he's good, let's do what he says the next day. The first day they will always say, he's crap conductor. What is he doing? Well, we don't need a conductor like this. Everybody, it's a human nature. It's normal. Yeah. So the first time you just work, you show that you can do something, if you can, and then next day you work. If you have something that they really don't know, they need you from the very first moment. So it really changes the dynamics. Then you have to be good, because if you are not good, everything goes crap about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I take it that you are good enough. So that.
I mean, you have to prepare. You have to be prepared. That's the point. You have to be. I mean, we are professionals, so maybe it's not a matter of being good, but you have to be prepared very well on the score.
Yeah. There cannot be blind spots, because they are all good quality musicians, and they'll catch. I mean, you catch. We all catch each other. We see the problems in that sense.
That's very interesting, because there are dynamics in even in the most respectful orchestras. There is sometimes there is something wrong. It's normal, no? So usually it's not very good to say, "Oh, you second stand on the right. You are sorry. There was a wrong note." This is very unpolite, So, but he has to know. And you have to know if he knows, because if he doesn't know, he will do it again. So, sometimes it's just a glance of the eye is enough. Sometimes it's not. And when it's not, there it's very tricky, Yeah.
So, normally, I mean, if somebody is off sometimes, then you see it, they know that you know it. So I think that's enough for them to know that that little key, not in its place was noted, and they can see that you're a jeweler. It has to be, the diamond has to be cut well, that it won't pass by the test. So is the conductor also like a quality check person?
Well, somehow it depends. I mean, you check the quality of the result, of course, but also the orchestra checks, because nobody wants to play bad. I mean, or if something is not working, everybody wants to improve. So, like I said before, there is an exchange with the musicians, and the ideal is that everyone goes in the same direction to achieve the maximum quality. So, okay, I check the quality of something, but I often say, when there are a lot of things, I say, guys, please help me with this, because I'm taking care of this other thing which needs me. I take care of everything, okay, but you are inside, so you hear better than me the third flute, for example, or some very small part inside the score. So, I mean, if there is something like this, it's beautiful. You can really exchange something and create something new, which is like, the catharsis it creates the catharsis effect of the Greeks. I intend, I don't want to be silly, but I intend the concept like a sort of a liturgy, So it's something that you begin, and the people shall go out transfigured from a concert. This is what I like to do. I mean, when I listen to a concert, a conductor and an orchestra that I know, or a soloist or a quartet, I don't know, I really feel that something is growing into my spirit. So this is what we try to achieve with our audience. It doesn't work always, of course, but it does not work with everyone. But in my experience, I remember a few episodes. One was a very small concert in a small town on the hills near Florence, where I lived, and it was a Pergolese's Stabat Mater, which is music I love very much. We were with a Baroque instruments, so like 15 people, not a big orchestra, 2 extraordinary singers. One is from Naples, Valentina Variale. She's a wonderful soprano from Naples. Now she's doing a solo career like a coloratura soprano, but she's great. And the other was Filippo Mineccia, a contraltist, which is also doing a great career in Germany, in the whole Europe. I was at the beginning of my career, but it was very, loved very much that piece. I studied a lot. I took the manuscript. I transcribed everything. It was a great work. And at the end of the concert, I remember the nuns near of the church coming in the changing room crying. That was something to me, because they were crying, say, you gave us a transcendent experience. This was really, it happens sometimes, it happens. That's beautiful.
Are there any funny stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, now I spoke about the transcendence, which is beautiful, but I want to share with you this story. I mean, it's transcendent in some way also, but we were in a very small town. I won't say the name, but let
me tell you one thing before you go there, if you remember.
Yeah.
There was a musician, a percussionist, playing in the, in winter. It was very cold, but because the percussionist is doing a lot of work, is a physical exertion, so he was sweating, and he did not have hair on. I mean, he was bald, so the perspiration was now evaporating. So it was very clearly the lights which are following, a lot of heat, and there was steam. And years later, I heard him speak that that concert was so great, there was something celestial, because there was energy going from my. It was clearly perspiration evaporating, but that was turned into a transcendental experience.
Well, but you see, is how you take things. It's just how you intend things. That was a spiritual experience for him.
But in retrospect, at that time he didn't know. Later on, people would have said, "Oh, that was great. You were being like a god." Anyway, you were telling, yes.
Yes, I mean, this is a very funny story. We were in this small town, a summer concert. You know, I usually don't work in summer because I like to stay in the mountains or on a sailing boat. This is what I like to do. But I was having this concert with a violinist friend as a soloist. So we went there at like 5 p.m. There was only one rehearsal in the afternoon because it was quite easy repertoire. The orchestra knew. So, and then at 6, nobody showed. No orchestra, no, everything closed, theater closed. I said, okay. I called the manager. So is this the right place? Yes, Andrea, I'm sorry. They had a problem with the car, but the orchestra is arriving. I said, okay, just wait. Then at 7 arrived like 4 people. It was like a 20 people orchestra, smaller string orchestra. 4. I say, okay, orchestra, but you are 4. And you are 1 violin, 2 violas, 1 double bass. I mean, what shall we do? I said, no, the other will arrive. But you see, in the end, only like 15 people arrived because 1 car never arrived. This car stopped in the motorway. But then we began, and we had only like half an hour rehearsal, before the concert. So I say, okay, let's cut the program. We do only half an hour. We run through, so we see together if we understand each other. And it was very difficult because the orchestra really didn't know the pieces, so we had to rehearse. In the end, okay, we finished our rehearsal, and we built 30 minutes. So concert, but 30 minutes could be achieved, not more. So I told to the manager, I say, Mr. Manager, I won't tell the name, but Mr. Manager, this is a problem. We have 30 minutes music. I can talk between one piece and the other. So you achieve your 1 hour concert. It was a summer concert, 1 hour. I achieved my concert, so everybody is happy. Do you agree? I said, okay, yes, if you can do this, thank you. Okay. So it was film music from the movies, no? It was Morricone and, who passed away recently, by the way, and John Williams, and all this kind of Nino Rota, very popular music. But it was not so perfect, so we began. It was not so bad, but not perfect, So we have some international problems, So, I began listening in the audience, like talking very low. I said, oh my God, what they will do now? They will kill us because it's not good enough. So I was sweating, and while my wife was in the first row, I look at my wife, I say, I look at her, like, be ready to escape, be ready to go, because we will finish very bad. So, we conduct the first suite, and after 10 minutes, long corona, I closed, and I was ready to something very bad. So I turned to the audience, and then, everybody was clapping. So, my face was like this. Beautiful, great, and the orchestra. So stand, and, what the audience was talking about. The pieces, because we didn't have the program, because we did only half concert, so we had to throw away everything, but they recognized the melodies, no? So so I invented this thing after this first 10 minutes. I said, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we do a small game. I will not tell you. See, there is no program. That's why we want you to guess what is a new piece. So, Cliff, viola, can you do the fifth bar? So, or the cello. So, what is that? And we made this game, and we achieved 1 hour concert in this way.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's a funny story for me. Yeah.
That is. So, I want to show to our friends the PDF. I mean, how do you prepare? My next, there's a second video that I would like to show everyone, and I want to look at the, your score, the way you have prepared that. How do you make those changes which I was mentioning earlier, that there are those your pencil and pen marks, and this, for example, every musician would have of their own when they are studying, they're learning how to play. And in the PDF that you shared with me, with your interventions on on these pieces, what are you doing here, and and how does it do you, when you're conducting, when you're rehearsing, is when you convey this to them, or how does it work? Beforehand, or when you're conducting yourself at the time is when you actually get to tell them by your gesticulation that this is what you want? Are these your reminders? Are these for your own recall? How does it work?
Well, mainly the signs on the score are for me to recall and to, when you study, it's useful to write down something. For example, first of all, you have to know the piece, and in order to know the piece, you have to analyze it. So we conductors, we often use a metric analysis, so the phrases, also for the memory, because even if you conduct with the score, more or less you know by heart what is going to happen, so this is very useful. Then the signs during the rehearsal, they can help. But the point is that you when you study, you can study for 1 year or years a score. You never stop, because when you perform a piece, then you stay 2 years without conducting the same piece. You come back on the score and you are changed, and also time has passed. So you need to go back on the score and to study it again from a higher level. But you have to study it again, no? So that's very interesting. Then when you are in front of the orchestra, you have to react to what happens. So even if you know exactly what you want, and in every score there are a few points that can create problems. There are the same problems everywhere in the world, bigger or smaller, but the problems are the same. The difficult passage, the difficult ensemble moment, the difficult intonation. It's quite the same. So you have to know this and to react accordingly. This is what I do. Then I like to analyze very, very in deep the scores, especially with contemporary music, because, for example, I don't have scores with me now, but I did this piece by Alessio Elia some time ago. I prepared the orchestra for the Untitled competition, and we had 3 contemporary pieces, one of which was Alessio's piece, and was very, very, very difficult, very demanding for everyone. Because there was no point when you can get intonation. For example, you have the strings; they have open strings. So if there is a total mess, but you can use an open string to have the actual intonation, I don't have perfect pitch. So for me, I react to what I listen. For me, the frequencies I recognize, but I don't have a perfect pitch, which will not be useful in my case. But anyway, if you don't have any thing where you can lean on, you have to analyze very well, and to have a strategy in rehearsal if something happens. The point is that you don't know with the new pieces what is going to happen. You can imagine more or less, but so the clearest you have the idea of the piece, the easiest is for you to solve a problem if there is one. So also the science, so coming back on the marking on the score, if you have a very complex score with very different instruments and different problems, for me it's like a reminder, okay, here, look, this is, for example, you have the score of, I sent you a picture of Appalachian Spring, yes, which is a wonderful piece by Aaron Copland, which I will do with Sofia Philharmonic in the next month with Andrei Gavrilov also in the concert. But for example, the beginning, there is this A major chord, which is okay. It's not difficult because it's A major with major seventh, but you have to know how it goes, and you have to know how you want it, because if everyone just plays, it's dissonant with the other. I make up my mind with an idea of the compositional ideas of Copland, which fortunately are very clear because he was a really great composer. You know, he composed in a very traditional way, like Brahms. You know, it's a germination from the very, very small material. So it's not difficult to analyze. But this you use if there is a problem, you know how to react.
I see. And this is very interesting. And the next page is also, so these red marks that you do are all emphasis, or they're all reminders, or what?
I'm sorry?
The red marks that you put on this.
No, the red marks are usually the cues, the entrances of the instruments.
I see.
If you see, I think I have the score here with me. There are these red, yellow marks when an instrument enters after a long break.
I see.
So you know that, I mean, hopefully he also knows, but you have to know this.
Right. So this is in front of you when you're conducting the kind of homework that you do before you enter a performance. This is what your homework is. I see. And then you, when you are, like for example, in the octet, the film that you showed, and you are basically imagining the orchestra. So that's the preparation you do, like the what you call shadow conducting. I don't know what the term would be.
Well, it also happens. You know, by the way, I think that Duilio and Chepe are listening to us. I cannot Facebook open because my connection is too low. But if you're there, ciao ragazzi, ciao. So you know, it's a long time that we don't meet each other. But I love these guys very much. So okay, you
I'll have to meet them when I visit Napoli next.
I hope soon. I hope we can maybe meet them together.
Yeah, maybe we can do an animation together.
Why not? So you sometimes you study in front of the how you call them, the glass. How you call the specchio? The mirror. Yeah, the mirror. Yeah, in front of a mirror. But yeah, as I told you, gesture is something really, for me, in particular, for me, it's a mystery because, you know, sometimes, okay, something works, something doesn't work. Sometimes you really don't have to do anything. I mean, you have to react to what happens. Once it's not opera, for example, in opera or with the solo concerto, you have to follow and do accompany is a completely different thing because they have to know when you go down. Maybe the orchestra is down in the pit, the singer is very far, nobody hear the singer, you barely hear him or her, so you have to. It's something very technical. But when a symphony concert, you know, sometimes you just stay and look and something happens, you know. Sometimes you do a lot of stuff, you sweat a lot and nothing happens. So it's really strange.
I see. And
you know what I don't like? What I don't like is to be considered an actor. Because, you know, we are on the podium to give life to this ritual, which is music. It's based on something that you have to hear. So, okay, it's business. So you have also to, you know, to go to dress properly, to smile to all the ladies in the first row. But the point is that we have to do music. So I don't like to, you know, to do something just for the television. And also, you know, also the orchestras, they can see immediately if you are just doing the actor style things or you are trying to communicate something. So it's something like that.
Is it coming to this idea of acting and living the moment? Is it like your celebration, if I can bring the term celebration, is it that it is actually the celebration in the mind and memory and heart of the conductor which must or can possibly translate onto the orchestra? That if the idea that it's not a mere act, not mere gesticulation, but it can be seen when it really is coming from inside. It's in the eyes. It's like you're silently singing, as if you're playing without the instrument. If there is pain, you're feeling that pain. It's like before the feelings of the piece get to reach the ears, the minds and the hearts and the soul of the audience, of those present, it works on you. It has an impact on you in anticipation, because you know what is after the turn that you're about to take. The orchestra then knows, but you're the driver. It'll be a turn the way you will take, at the speed, at the pace that you will take. And I see also the difference, because when I talk to top musicians, their demeanors are very silent, very very idle. Like they're like idols, they're statues. Whereas my conversations with the conductors, they are much more expressive with the body. It's like they're much more open. As if the violinist or the cellist or the flautist, they are trained to be still, not to gesticulate, not to move much. But the conductor is someone who's like the dance. It's the Tandav, of the Shiva, as we say. How is it? I mean, how is it? Am I right in my assessments, or am I way off the mark?
You're right. No, you're right. But it depends. It depends very much on personality, on single personalities, because I don't like to move very much, for example. But when maybe sometimes you're on the podium and you just feel the moment and it happens. There are conductors that jump and do crazy things, and everything is perfect. There are conductors that move a lot and everything is crap. Yeah, this really depends. What can I say is, for me, you're right on the statement that if you feel it, then you are able to communicate, if I may synthesize. So if you as a musician, as a conductor, really feel in yourself what you want the orchestra to express, and so what you want to reach the audience with, then you may be able to achieve it in a way or in another. The point is that there are things, when you decide your interpretation, you decide it before. So, and you decide it accordingly, according to what effects you want to achieve. And we deal with also with emotions and with this spirituality, with emotions mainly. So that if you want to achieve this kind of emotion, you have to do this kind of, for example, crescendo and ritenuto and corona and something like that. If you want to achieve this kind of intellectual movement in the brain of the audience, you have to do something, So you decide this before. But when you are performing, for me at least, I like to live the moment, because every time is different. You rehearse 4 days or 3 days or one month in case of an opera in an empty hall. Then you do the performance in a full hall with completely dressed people, with critics, with television, with all kinds. It's completely different. Even the acoustics is not only how you perceive it. Yeah. I mean, the acoustics changes completely. So I think that you have to react to that. I remember one to explain better what is my point. I remember one concert, just one recent concert with Roberto Proceda in Turkey. I was talking about this before. He was doing the Schumann piano concerto. Actually, it was okay, good. I mean, he's a great pianist. The orchestra is not bad orchestra, but it is a small town, so we had a good result, but we stayed quite, take care to keep it together. Then in the slow movement, in the adagio, Roberto began to do a diminuendo and a rallentando, a ritenuto, slower and slower, and piano and more piano and pianissimo. And I was thinking, okay, we cannot do more like this. We have to stop. This is okay. This is enough. Please keep the tempo, please. But when we look each other, and something happened, we continued to sing, and all the orchestra and also us we were transfigured completely. It was a huge success, by the way. But we still remember that moment, like the moment of the great concert. The rest, okay, it's a very beautiful concert, very good success, but it was real time. It was just because he was feeling it. I felt what he felt. The orchestra also followed that, so it was something an organism that, but it was also it was on a blade. You are on a blade, so if something happened. But you know what? Nicholas Harnoncourt, which was one of the greatest musicians of our time, in my opinion, one who was able to do Baroque and Gershwin at the same highest level possible. So he once took an interview and he said, if you don't want to risk, if you don't want to take risks, this is not a job for you. You cannot be a musician. And he was right. The point is, when you do a concert and you don't want to get a wrong note, okay, you're already missing the point. You are not there to show that you can do the notes, because, okay, we suppose that you are able to do it. But if for doing the right notes, you forget the music, for me, it's not interesting to listen a correct concert. Let me listen a mistake, but let me listen to some idea, to some music. If you listen to the recording of the past, I don't know, there is a Schumann concert, there is a Carnival, maybe, of Papillon, Schumann's, by Clara Askill. She begins with a completely wrong chord, completely wrong. But she goes on like a goddess, so this is music. Okay, if you come to listen to my concerts, I usually do write notes also, guys, but I also try to do music. We have to find a balance,
But if we take a classic, something that just everybody would know, a piece, something that you can think of right now, just the first most known piece that you can think of. Can you name one?
Well, Beethoven Fifth, maybe,
okay.
I don't know.
So it's Beethoven Fifth. That everybody knows. So it's so well known that people can touch it. They've touched it a million times. What is it that you can still do as a conductor? Talking of the risks, as one of our dear friends, Vibhuti Sachdev, says, I wonder what the music critics make of such departures from revered classical compositions. Do they have a significant presence? I think somehow, I'm just maybe stretching it, but if I may borrow some of her expression, if that is so well known, what is the margin still left? It's as if there is no more unknown that the conductor can enable.
It's very easy. Yeah.
What is it that you can still do to create that idea of the unknown, that which is not, that space which has never been, that virgin space which nobody has ventured into before? Are there spaces that still exist?
Okay. Well, talking about virgin spaces is very difficult nowadays with Beethoven Fifth. I don't think there are virgin spaces, and I don't think I am the guy that can say something new on that symphony. But what I can do, and everyone that does my job shall do, is this. There is one common thing. If you want to be safe, just keep the tempo. Ta 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 ta, and just let the orchestra go. Keep the tempo. There is a fermata, okay, fermata, and there you go. No agogics. This saves your ass. Sorry, but this saves you in every situation, because everybody is able to keep the tempo in classical pieces. You cannot do this in romantic music. So you cannot do this in Schumann. In Brahms, so it depends. But if you do this, you save the concert. For me, this is my opinion, of course. But for me, music is not keeping the metronome. For me, music is related to life, which is related to agogics. It's like the beat of the heart. No, if I now go and run, my heart will reach 120 beat per minute. Now I'm about, 70, 60, 80, I don't know. So according to what happens in the score, it's right to go faster and slower, or to enlarge a phrase, or do something like this. So if you don't want to risk, you just keep the tempo. With agogics, you can really do what you want. Maybe you will not give new light to Beethoven because it's, but you can give your interpretation, which maybe someone would say is not appropriate, I don't like, is not in style. Okay, but still is music. For example, there is Brahms in the symphonies. He writes, for example, in the first and the second, he writes largamente in the second theme of the first movement of the first symphony, for example. And largamente, someone says, okay, it's another tempo.
Yes.
Sorry, I and something went. Anyway,
yeah.
It's another tempo.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Someone says no. It's just keep the tempo. It's just an idea. You can choose, but there is this tradition with romantic music that the second theme shall be the feminine theme. Let's say shall be a bit slower. Why not? If the music suggests this, why not? But you have to have clear ideas. You have to be able to communicate with your hands. I don't know, in any way. But you have to want. The will to do this must be very strong, because it's much easier to go in tempo from the beginning to the end. Much easier.
So when music is all written, so I'm understanding, because you mentioned about the idea, the screen is good. No, it's fine. It's okay. The frame was all right.
So I'm sorry. I just yeah.
So in terms of, you mentioned about the idea of the risk, for example. Yeah, this is good for me. I can, because that was my question immediately that I was waiting to ask. You mentioned about not touching, do not be afraid of missing a note. But when music is already written, everybody's basically following that. Now you've introduced to me an idea that the pace can be, pace can fluctuate. Like you mentioned about what you did with Roberto Proceda, that he wanted it to go slow, and magic happen, and something that you were afraid that maybe it's not a good idea, but then it was bingo, eye-to-eye contact, and it just worked fine.
It was very risky. Risky. We felt it. But yeah, but we did.
So, is the risk now available where you have already set music? Is it only what kind of risk is what you do? Is in terms of the layer, the pace, the rhythm, that is, or how can a musician miss a note when it is already written? I mean, what is it that you're what do you mean by that for my kind of a lay person?
Well, it's everything is written, but you have to consider that we have let's say 60 people playing together. And for example, you have the row of the violins or violas or cellos or whatever playing usually the same part together. So when you keep the tempo, you just have to count more or less. It's not that easy. Yeah? It's not that easy. But when you stretch the tempo, they have to feel it, to think it together in the very same way.
I see.
So, because if you just do a minor stretch in the tempo, as a very small ritenuto, it must be together, because you will feel. For example, when you change a note, if we have a ta-da, two notes, second, if I keep the ta and the other goes to da, not in the same play, the same moment, you will have a dissonance, which everybody can hear. I mean, this is the risk. Missing a note is something like this.
I see. So it's very important for me. Just a clarification for me as well. So it's not that the note is out of tune. It is not in the same pace. It is either following before or after the moment that you're establishing, that pace that you're establishing. That is the risk that you're talking about.
Well, when you manage to do something with agogics, the main risk is that. But when you have problems of intonation, they can result from you put the finger in the wrong place, or you miss the note. Okay, and this is very subtle. It's very subtle because you don't have. I mean, it's not a keyboard of the piano. When the violin you can have a huge number of notes between two notes, so it's very subtle. But when you have a row of instruments that play the same thing and they don't go down together, you will feel a problem of intonation also. I remember the first times I began to conduct professionally, I struggled to understand whether there was a problem of intonation or a problem of insieme. Then with experience you understand when it's okay, that guy is doing a wrong note. Okay, so please you fix it. But usually they just are perfectly together. Even the bow, you have a bow which is like this, and if you use the bow in the very same way, it's okay. But even the smallest modification in the pressure of the bow, in the pressure of the left hand, talking about the strings, changes the sound. So when the sound changes, you can feel it like a problem of intonation also. Because when the sound changes, if you do a small vibrato, which is common, if it's the exact, it can be done in many different ways. That's why you have to interview on the agogics, but also on the way you play, also on the intonation. But more the intonation is the intonation is a vertical problem. When you have for complex chords with many instruments, usually there are techniques to fix these things. It's not difficult, but you have to know where to stop and where to fix things. But even if everything is okay from the vertical point of view, you have to choose what kind of sound you want. So you can work in many ways, many ways.
I see. So let me show to everyone the second video, which you have.
What is that?
Elvira Muratore. You want to tell us about
my
this?
wife? Yeah.
You have a trauma to share?
Sorry?
You have a trauma to share?
Oh, no, I don't. But I have beautiful stories about that piece.
Oh, you want to tell us before or after?
I think after.
Okay. That was quite something. That is by, I mean, Valerio Losito was there.
Yes.
Tell me about this piece. You were mentioning their stories with this.
It was very, very beautiful for all of us because it was one of the first times that we could do. I cannot see your video anymore, Bhai.
Oh, must be.
Is that okay?
No, I'm there, back.
Okay. Now you're there. Yeah. So it was one of the first times that I performed a piece of my wife, which is Elvira Muratore, and with a friend like Valerio. I know Valerio since, I don't know, a lot of time. We made other concerts together.
He joined my ensemble.
We are very good friends.
I made this Anād ensemble. Yeah. He was an important. He played, of course, the Lira di Braccio.
Viola d'Amore?
No, he didn't play the Viola because it was the music I had run was not possible to do on Viola d'Amore, but he played Lira, the Lira di Braccio.
Oh yes, he's a great expert of Baroque and instruments. Yeah, I love him. I love him very much.
But I think he hates
me.
me.
So it was a very, very beautiful.
I think Valerio hates me.
Really? No, I don't think.
I'm kidding. No, he loves color red. I was there at the luthier's shop in next to Roma Termini, where he had the bridge of the Viola d'Amore, dyed in deep red. I mean, it's bright red. In fact, he had a special bridge. Did you know that?
No, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
I was there in, I think February. I took photos of that as well. Yes, you were mentioning about the piece, the first time that you did something
Yes,
of
one of the first times that I did an important piece of my wife in an important theater, because we were in Thessaloniki at Megaron, which is a wonderful place. I mean, it is on the Thermaic Gulf, on the Gulf of Salonico, and the foyer is completely built in glass. So when you go out of the stage, you can see the whole Gulf of Thessaloniki. It's something that really opens your heart. So it was a very, very good experience, and we had a beautiful moments, because in Greece the orchestras are not like in Germany. I mean, for example, the rehearsal was going to be at 10, and I remember the very first day I go there few minutes before, and okay, nobody shows. Okay, then at 10:15 someone begins to arrive. Then at 10:30 the orchestra is there, so I say, guys, sorry, maybe I made some mistake, but wasn't the rehearsal supposed to be at 10? So they say, yes, but we are in Greece, siga siga, they have this kind of the word, siga siga is slow. So, and okay, so I understood. And then the next time I was going to the rehearsal at 10:45, so they were waiting for me. It was a joke like this, every day. But it was a very beautiful experience. So did you like the piece? Did you enjoy the piece?
Yeah, very, 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 very interesting. And there was the thing that I saw was that there was this communication between Valerio and the player, the soloist.
The clarinet.
There was a lot of like tenderness. There was almost like they were like thinking. It was not.
This is something very beautiful that happened. The clarinet solo is the first clarinet of the Thessaloniki City Symphony Orchestra, and he's a very good friend of mine also. And so during that days, but we met in that period. So I mean, in the days of the production, we began a good friendship between us, between me and Odysseus, but also Odysseus and Valerio. It was something very beautiful to play together, and you can see this from the performance. That was I was telling you before about the concert with Roberto, or about many others. When you have you have to establish something with the people you play with, and with music is really necessary. But it's good with any job, I mean, I think. But with music, it's really necessary, because you can feel the difference. And I think between Odysseus and Valerio, there was this exchange. He worked very hard, so it was very satisfactory for all of us. And the piece was not easy, because from the video, you just listen to this very slight sound, harmonic, like boom, 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 which seem easy to do, and technically they are not difficult for the orchestra. But usually an symphony orchestra is more used to play Brahms or Beethoven or Tchaikovsky or whatever than a piece like this. So we were talking about the agogics and the risks. When you have a piece which is very delicate like this one, the risk is that you just play like like without not caring to the sound, which is wrong. So the main work on this piece was to find the good sound. I remember every rehearsal we improved a little, just to find a good way of pressing the bow, pressing the fingers, and this is something that you can also take risks, because if you don't want to take risks, you just say, okay, this piece is in 4/4. You just go 1, 2, 2 pa, easy, very easy. But if you want to do music, especially with the easy but not so common techniques, like everything is harmonics and stuff like that, well, then it's challenging.
And this is very interesting for me, that this piece that you played with our common friend Valerio Losito, who's an amazing musician. Both me and Czeslaw were amazed. I mean, it was an amazing team that we had in for my Rai Tre, La Musica Stanza thing that we did on the 6th of March. The 7th March, our concert was postponed, perhaps even now cancelled because of the pandemic. But what I'm sort of wanting to address with you is the idea of the composer. Normally, when you have composers who have long passed away, 2 centuries, 3 centuries, 4 centuries ago, this composer is your wife, and or a composer
she's
that you
not
know.
300 years old.
She's not? Oh gosh, thank you.
She's
for
not
telling that.
300 years old. Yeah.
Okay, good to know that. So, how was she present when that concert was played? When you guys played, she was there as well.
Yeah.
So, how is it different? I mean,
She
when you
was
have a
there.
composer at hand, was it an impediment or was it a help? But then, if she is the composer who can speak still, who can talk still, who can who can freak out if things are not going the way she has intended the music to be, how unique it is, how different it is, how easy or difficult it is.
You know, first of all, when you, as a composer, you release a piece, you give a piece to the audience, to a conductor, to an orchestra, to a performer, you are not anymore the owner of that piece. You know, I mean, I began my career as a composer many years ago. So then I quit it, but I know very well the situation. Once the piece is going around, you know, you cannot control it anymore, and it's beautiful because you just wrote something that needs musicians to come to life. So it's quite natural. No, you cannot do anything about this. So this is the first thing. Second is I like to have a composer when in presence when I do a new piece. I always like that, not only in case of my wife. The thing is that for the first rehearsal, maybe also the second, you don't need a composer. Because usually when you have a new piece, the first time is always a mess, completely mess, because nobody knows it. You know what it will be, but you also know that the first time will not even seem like what it is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So when you invite a composer at the first rehearsal, you always fight with a composer. Or, I mean, if he is smart and experienced, he doesn't come. You come at the second day. So I invited also Elvira only the third day. And then it's interesting because, when you study the score, I like to discuss with the composer before the rehearsal. I like a lot to exchange. I learned a lot of things from my friends composers, like also Elvira, but more also others like Andrea Portera, Alessio Elia, this guy I told you, Rita Ueda, many others, Peter Oetvosch, which is now one of the greatest in Europe. I also learned a lot from these guys because, you have your ideas and in case they are not conductors, like Elvira, she's not a conductor, or even Andrea or Alessio, Peter is, but you know better than them how to achieve a result, but they know better than you what they write, of course. So at a certain point, you make up your mind with an idea, and it's beautiful to discuss with them. Then you go to the rehearsal, you build the piece. When the piece is built, then so please listen, tell me if you want me to do something different, you prefer something. And usually, then there is a moment to exchange opinions.
I see. And then the reversal of that, in the sense that when you have now the experience of working with a composer who is accessible, and then you go back to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or any other piece that you'll be, let's say, conducting. How do you take back that experience of having worked with a composer who's in your presence and who's available at your beck and call, and then suddenly you are dealing with the work of a composer who lived 400 years ago, 300, 200 years ago? how does have your conversations changed ever since? I understand, I've taken note that you yourself started as a composer, then you left it. So there is a composer within you, but still, I can still say that composer within you is different from the composer who is without, who's another, let's say, a friend of yours or someone unknown to you who's not a friend, but you're only getting to know, who may initially be hesitant in trying to convey, and that ice could take time to melt. But here it is Elvira, who's you guys have you've grown together as musicians for some time. But how does your conversation with Beethoven or Mozart or anybody else that you're working with that change? Do you begin to miss something that I wish Beethoven was there, or your conversation that already was before is enhanced? Is there any change? I mean,
well, of course it's different, but I think that you shall go in front of a new score, for you, new score, like it was never performed before. I mean, the first time now I'm studying this Appalachian Spring, for example. For me, I like to try to think it like a brand new piece, because for me it's so. Even with Beethoven, with classical music, you can have this kind of approach. Of course, you cannot ask Beethoven what he wanted, but you can, for example, rely on the documents on his during the period of his life. With the classical and ancient music is a bit complicated, because if you want to be like a musicologist, to use original performance, original instruments, or to try to be how can I say, philological, you have to study the documents. For example, at the times of Beethoven, that there was this Karl Stamitz, who was a very important violinist, who wrote an important treatise on violin. I remember this because it's very interesting. He writes about the vibrato on the violin, and he specifies different ways to do the vibrato. Stamitz was, by the way, the inventor of the spalliera, to keep the violin. So different ways to do the vibrato. Then, going with the history in the Romantic period and then 20th century, the vibrato became standard. So now we do like without vibrato, Baroque without vibrato, historically informed performances without vibrato, or vibrato like alpha tone with Romantic music. This is also a choice you have to do. And you cannot ask Beethoven, but more or less how it will be being performed at this time. But this is less interesting than to interrogate yourself, to question yourself about the inner meaning of the music. This is more interesting. So you can, you make up your mind, you make your own movie about what Beethoven wanted to realize with. We talk about Beethoven Fifth, okay, the fate that knocks at the door. It is or it is not. It is a possibility. Why not? But you can make up your mind with some idea, and this is very interesting. You cannot ask a composer, but I can tell you that even when you ask the composer about this kind of things, usually it happens that you make up your mind in a completely different way or respect to them. You can agree on technical issues. It is important. You have to agree about technical things, but about the meaning, often is really an exchange, because music is music. It doesn't represent something. Even if you put the film music, the music of a movie into another movie, it can completely change everything. The meaning of the movie also, maybe, if you put a sunset like here, is almost sunset here. You put a sad music, let's say, it can become a sad sunset. If you put a joyful things, it can even become something joyful. So,
you mentioned about you started as a composer, and now you've become a conductor, full-time conductor. What interests you in being a conductor?
Well, you see, as a conductor, I began to conduct. I was a pianist also and a composer, but I was a pianist, and I wasn't good enough as a pianist to achieve the results I wanted to achieve. It's a bit sad, but it's like this, I could play. I was a professional pianist. I was a professional accompanist. So, but I couldn't achieve the quality of playing that I wanted because of many reasons. I don't know. It's also nature. It's also talent. I don't know.
Opera or what?
With singers and instrumentalists.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So I began to conduct, and I realized that with that conducting, I could achieve better results. Maybe I'm more talented in conducting. I don't know, but for sure, technically, is a completely different thing. You have to rely on different abilities. But when you have a high-level ensemble of orchestra of musicians, for me, it's much easier to have a good result. I mean, for everyone, I think, because the playing is very demanding from the technical point of view. You have to struggle every day on the instrument. So it's a different job. I mean, for me, conducting is easier. I must say, it's a bit easier. I don't do this because it's easier.
I understand.
I do this because but it's a very wide world. But from the technical point of view, it's not mechanical. This is maybe the point. It's not mechanical.
Can an orchestra manage without a conductor when they're all experts and they've been doing for, let's say, is there a moment in an orchestra's life when musicians have played and performed together for 20, 25 years? Is there a moment that they just know and they can do with their eyes closed and they don't need to look at the conductor? Or they're still dependent? Or, I mean, dependent in the sense of dependent in the sense of a dynamic relationship, which is both ways. Do they feed? I mean, a conductor to feed them and them to feed the conductor.
I think that it's not a matter of how long they have been playing together, but in which way they have been. Because, you as a conductor, you give your idea and you develop it together with them, but mainly you imprint your idea more than the fifth or the 12th violin in the row, of course. So when you begin to work like this, you rely on the conductor. It's normal. But there are orchestras, like in Italy, we have this, I don't remember the name. Anyway, there is a very, very good orchestra in Italy who plays without conductor. There are two. One I don't remember. One is Colibri. It's from Pescara. They play without conductor, and they play very, very well, believe me. But they began without conductor, so they know exactly how to rehearse, first of all, because you have to do a rehearsal in a different way. Because, for example, you have the fourth horn that has something as a note that gives the beginning to something. You have to listen to him. But maybe, you are far, something, you have to know. First of all, you have to know that you have to listen to him. Second, maybe it's better that if you look also at him. So sometimes in this kind of orchestras, it's like a quartet or an ensemble. There's someone giving a cue, maybe with a violin or with a horn. So it's a different dynamic, but of course they can do it from the first time. It's not a problem. It's a bit difficult when you have a big orchestras. It is not only from the technical point of view, but also from the human point of view, because can you imagine putting together 90 people without having a clearly recognized, even if hated, even if they think is good for nothing, but a clearly recognizable leader? It's very difficult. So the conductor is more or less the leader. You cannot respect, you can avoid to respect him. You can think that he is not good, but still is good to have someone that you can rely on in certain points.
Is a conductor a glorified metronome?
Not a good conductor. If he's a good, as I told you, for me, agogics is the heart of music. So if you just keep the metronome, you don't need a conductor in that case.
Okay. Now, that was a naughty one. music, early Western music was always mostly funded by church and sometimes by the feudals for their entertainment, mostly dance. And that was the role in a way, a very limited role for the elite, for the high class and so on and so forth, people who could access that and people who could afford it. I mean, people usually, if in an orchestra which was funded, or quartets or quintets and so on and so forth, or ensembles in different sizes, let's say 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago, 600 years ago, they were at the mercy or the pleasure of the patron. If the patron so desired that commoners also get to hear them, so they heard. But it was not that it was not easy to get some of the finest musicians to just be put together. So it had a certain role in society, stipulated already, like it was set. This is what happens here in the palace, in the ballrooms, etc. Church would be this. Some of the top musicians composing for the church, others, etc. What do you think is the role of music in the society today? When a piece which was written, for example, for a certain church in a certain time, it is still being played in a public place, in a public arena. Let's say the Carnegie Hall where you've conducted. It is now technically taken out of place. It has lost its original purpose in that sense. For example, if I'm enjoying something that was written for as part of a church service, I'm not responding to it as that. It is just another musical piece for me. What do you think is the role of music in society today? And then I want to come to contemporary music, but generally the music first. My first part would be the music which was written in the past, and when you conduct and when you witness from that podium that you stand on, and then you look at the people. You are that person who's like the threshold of when you look in one side. It is the musicians who are going to realize that composer, who are going to help you bring alive a composer's intent, and even perhaps the composer's, flair, flamboyance, and a vision, and his or her vision. And then you look back, as you said, then you look at the audience, or you hear the audience. They are the people, they are the consumers of the day, they are the patrons of the day. How has that changed? And what is the role of
well, it's not easy to answer. Okay, music has had many different roles in the past. You mentioned the church music. This is okay, but it's also related to the fact that church was the place where the culture was preserved in the Middle Ages. So they began to write music. And that's why we have the early examples of music written music are mostly sacred, because they could write in some way. We don't have this for the secular music. But today, it's like the literature or like the art. When you go to a museum and you look at Caravaggio, or I don't know, you go to look at the ancient Indian art, for example, which I don't know, but sometimes I saw astonishing things, in architecture and in art. You look at something that was, and now is an intellectual joke, is something related to culture, to the fact that we are evoluted, and we can appreciate this kind of entertainment. The point is, for me, is the concept of entertainment, because if you intend entertainment like something very light, that you turn off your mind, you look at the television, okay, this is not music, not classical music, this is not going to look at Caravaggio, and not reading a a romance or a poetry of Byron or who else you like from the past. So the role of the music of the past today is to entertain, but in a high way, cultured people who demand for high quality entertainment. I say this because I care very much. I care very much of the spiritual aspect of my job, as I told you. But I also care very much that we keep our feet on the ground. So we must, as professionals, but also as human beings, we must know that we do something for other people. So if you just think to the highest culture, I just play this for myself, it's okay. I do also this. I have my own spinetta, I do my things, okay. I do very strange contemporary music also only for myself. But when I do a concert, I always think about the audience. And you have to know that this audience has to achieve something that for someone will be this transcendental experience, but for someone will just be entertainment of one night, high level entertainment, not like going to the strip club, okay, but still is entertainment. So this is the role, I think.
I see. And how do you see contemporary music versus the classical, the ones that are? And you mentioned, I appreciated you mentioned that sacred music was written, secular was not, because it was accessible. The composers, etc., had access to writing it and preserving it. Much of it has reached our times. A lot of music has been lost. Not everything is available to us. Many of the manuscripts have been lost, but still a lot has arrived, but mostly it is sacred. And but how is contemporary music seen? Is music of the same? Does that help? I mean, does that traditional music help in the generation of quality contemporary music, or the old music has no role?
Well, it's a bit complicated. I think there is a big division between the popular music and cultural music. I don't like very much this division because it's always a blend of things. But if we intend popular, the songs that you hear at the radio, the songs that are more spread and that sell more, it's clearly something very simple with recognizable melody, something that is like McDonald's music, something you can, even if there is wonderful songs. So I mean, I'm not speaking about quality. I'm speaking about, in this case, the role that it has. It has a role that is good for the everyday listener, for the teenager, and you know what? Most of us are impressed by the songs when we are teenager, because you grow up and you have your first you fell in love the first time, you become a man or a woman, and your life changes a lot, and the songs that you hear in that period of your life will accompany for the whole life of your, even if, for example, now I'm a conductor, but I still remember songs which I would not consider good music now, but they are so strongly related to my own personality that I love them, really. When I listen to them, I feel emotional.
Which one? Can you sing one?
I won't tell you.
Come
no,
on.
I can.
You have to tell
us.
I
can, but I don't know. Maybe you don't know. But for example, there is this guy, Vasco Rossi, who is a rocker from Modena, not far from here. From Zocca, which is a small town on the hills. And Vasco is really the kind of rocker that drugs and unregulated life. One of his famous songs is Vita Spericolata, which is a perilous life. Can you imagine? But I grew up in that kind of environment. So the music is like 3 chords, 4 sometimes, always the same. Beautiful melodies, but very, very simple, small extension of the voices. I mean, nothing that now you could say, oh, it's intellectually stimulating. But still, I also love John Dowland, which is very easy. But, John Dowland is my favorite songwriter, but it's from the 60th century. So today you cannot listen to very much to John Dowland, but it's the same principle, no? So this is one kind of music. The other kind is the music that is written in the past. For example, we were talking about cultural music. When you talk about Beethoven, Verdi, of these are part now of the high sphere of culture, which we have to look well. It was not like this at their time. If you consider Rossini at their time was the most famous opera writer of the world. So it was popular. I mean, it was really popular. Now it's different. I don't know why. I don't know why, but it's very different. So the role, I also don't know what the role is, But there is a division between this kind of music and the other, and how can the cultural, historical, let's say, or classical, or romantic, or whatever music, repertoire music, be in relation with contemporary music, and if they will help each other? I don't know, because I see when you go to the theater, usually the theaters, they program old music and a small amount of titles, because the abbonati, how you call that, the subscribers, they will go only if they know what they're going to listen. This is reasonable. But the risk is when the audience grows older and older, we don't have any new audience. So it becomes always smaller and smaller and smaller. It's a bit risky, On the other side, when you program contemporary music, often the language is not comfortable to the ears of the normal audience. So it can be shocking. And usually both the musicians and the audience say, okay, we have to listen to contemporary music, 10 minutes pieces, then we have the repertoire. This happens, and I hate this. And when I program concerts, I always, when I can, because I cannot always, but when I can, I put at least one piece of contemporary music every time, and it works, because if you choose good music, if you perform it well, and if you put it in a good program, if you give a line of lecture, a reading line of the concert, everybody will appreciate that. But it's a paradox, because the language, the sound of the contemporary music is nearer to the popular side than to the classical. But this is normal, because we are people, we are children of our time. So that the sounds that I hear when I come to life in the 20th or 21st century are the sounds of the techno music, or the songs are not the sound of Beethoven. So it would be beautiful to have more courage for me, more daring artistic directors to put more contemporary quality music in the programs. I mean, we are quite lucky here in Tuscany, because we have this guy in Torre del Lago Festival, which is Giorgio Battistelli is his name. I don't know him personally, but Giorgio Battistelli, he was artistic director of Opera di Roma and of Orchestra della Toscana. Now he's on the Opera Festival in Torre del Lago, Puccini Festival. And I remember I listened to a lot of very, very high quality concerts with all contemporary music, with a crowded audience, because he was able to blend the programs and to present it to the audience in a good way. But it's one of the few I know. It's at that level, at least. It's one of the few. So it's not easy.
I see. And the traditional music, is it necessary, therefore, as you mentioned about you using quality listeners, or you're referring to class, people who are high class, who somehow it's not a commoner's music, it's not popular music. We talk of audiences, we talk of access. I mean, you do not opera houses are not cheap access places, cheaply accessed places. But in terms of musicality, is it necessary to study the works which are traditional, which are written before? What is the role of that traditional music, in your opinion?
Well, I don't think is first of all, the opera houses are not can be very cheap. I mean, if you buy the tickets in the Logione, they can be cheaper than a rock concert. If you go to listen to an internationally renowned rock group, rock band, you will pay 10 times more than an opera. So they can be very cheap. This is the thing. From the level of the education of the class, it is a class. It is a matter of fact because we are not educated in that kind of thing, and there's also a class, an intellectual class, not an economical class. But also is a class of people that for example, I love very much Borges, which is a very popular author from Argentina. Okay, but I also love Umberto Saba, for example. He's a poet from Italy, which is very known, but it's not popular. This is the people who, like me, love this kind of poets. We are a small class of people that have this intellectual view. It's not about of being better or worse than another, but this is what I like and what we like, So in this way, yes, it is a class indeed. In the other way, you were telling about if you need an education no, you don't need an education. In my opinion, you don't need an education because everybody has listened for the first time to some piece. For example, I remember I listened to the Rossini symphonies and Beethoven symphonies, and I really fell in love. I began studying music after a while, after listening by chance to this music that opened to me a completely new world. It opened a world that was fantastic, was like fantasy, So you don't need education. Then when you begin to experience this and you begin to love something, it's natural that you also want to be cultivated, and you study and you try to understand why something happens. You study history of music, maybe, but it's really not necessary. Also, I think that everyone, if you perform well any masterpiece of the past, everyone will appreciate that. Maybe not for 2 hours, but for one movement of a symphony, everyone will appreciate. Everyone.
But do they, in terms of musicianship, is that education important? Does learning that music, which is associated with the high class and also the intellectual class, both together? I'm glad that you've made that distinction. But of course, privilege in the old times usually belonged to families that had access to education. So somehow I took that as granted, but I'm glad that you've specified that. Does that music give you, let's say, medieval or later, like say the Baroque, the early Renaissance period, Baroque, and later a modern music, as cellos and violins came, that music, for example, a music that was written, let's say, until the mid-19th century or late 19th century, from centuries ago, as long as you have the notations from the Gregorian chants, if I may. Is it important? What does it give? How important it is to learn that music, even for someone who's writing, like you've been a composer, you're writing your music. How important was it for you or all of the, like your wife is a composer. How do you see, as two people who have in their blood the idea of composing, who are receiving melodies from the skies, how important do you think is that education, or is it dispensable, that it's no longer needed what those guys, is it binding, is it limiting a factor to learn ancient music?
Education is always crucial. It depends on you. If you decide if you become slave of your education, or if you use your education for what you want to express. So this is very personal, I think. Regarding your first thing you said, today, nowadays, the education is very accessible to everyone. You see, we are speaking from the other part of two very different parts of the world. You are an Indian, I'm an Italian. Still, we are musicians.
And
so
we're speaking in English.
You are and we are speaking in English. So, but we have many things in common. But probably we have the same amount of things that are different from between me and you. So, this doesn't create any problem in communication, because we want to communicate. We want to, at least from my point of view, we are curious to know new things. I would love to also to interview you next time, so I can learn a lot of things about you and your culture, which I am very curious of. So that's what I want to say. I want to say that today, if you want to have an education, you can have it without being the high class. I'm a son of workers. I did my graduation when I was 28, because I worked from when I was 14. Then I began to study music at 16, something like that. And then I was working in a cafe while graduating in conservatoire. So I mean, still I'm a self-taught also. I had the lessons, but I'm mainly self-taught. So, well, you can do everything today. It's not difficult to access the higher level of education. It's not difficult. It's very easy. If you imagine the ancient times, okay, let's talk about the Middle Ages, when a book costed like today will cost a building, literally. So I mean, today you want to understand Sanskrit. Okay, it's not easy probably, but I can access all the information through internet, which is something good, but is also it could be also limiting. I don't know. So it's not a matter of money, because the money. Usually the people think about money as a problem. Money is numbers. Money is something good because it's objective. So you can count money, and it's very easy to count. But it has nothing to do with the inner value of the people. And, I always say, as I told you, I've come from a poor family. I'm not the wealthiest man in the world until now. I mean, I'm not interested about money. I'm not interested in money at all. But when there is some project and maybe a theater says to me, "Oh, maestro, this is too expensive. We cannot achieve this thing. We cannot do this." Or a friend, I would like to have this boat. I cannot achieve that. I said, money is never the problem. Money is never the problem. The problem is you have to find a solution for what you want. Then, if what you want is something really accessory, like to having a boat to show to people that you have a boat, then you are stupid. I'm sorry. Then you are the problem. But if you want a boat to feel free on the ocean, I mean, you can buy a 5 billion boat or a 5,000 euros boat. So it's really up to you. So education is important. It's crucial. And I don't accept people that say, okay, I didn't have access to education because I have to work. I don't understand classical music. I'm not cultured. Okay, I respect them, but okay, you simply don't want, because I don't want. Why? But you don't want. And also, it's much easier to listen to Vasco Rossi than to listen to a whole symphony of Beethoven. But also, the gain is much lower. I mean, I say to my friends, try. And often they say, okay, yes, it's not my cup of tea, but it's something huge.
Do you improve as a contemporary composer? For example, one of my very dear friends, Anjali Kalia, who's one of the top designers from my part of the world. I have, worked on certain designs with her. And the idea of knowing about how fabric was cut and stitched and made, and the lines, the way they were drawn, how a human body was fitted or sort of clad with fabric, I see that impacts the contemporary creations that she would do and other friends of mine. One of them, J.J. Valaya, I'll be conversing with later this coming week, who's one of the top designers in India. How is that, for example, food? We take, like, if I'm visiting Napoli, the idea that my friend Nello Delgato, the journalist who's nowadays in Jerusalem, he would take me to Mount Vesuvius for that, pizzeria, which is in the middle of the, half the way up. It's unique. It's his friends, and why do you go there? There's something to do there. It's the tomato, for example. Tomatoes grown here may not have the same taste. What is it? I mean, are you as a contemporary composer better off? Do you have better language, more awareness when you're writing contemporary music, having studied ancient music, or it's not necessary that it's no use to study ancient music to be a great contemporary composer?
From my experience, when you have an education, you see it on the scores. You see the difference. Yeah, it's quite, it's like an architect, for example. You can have I have ideas. I want to build a house. We bought this new house here. You see this very beautiful surroundings, and I could have ideas to build a field and raise on a house. I can have ideas. I want to, aesthetically, I know how I want it. But if I don't know how technically I have to put together the parts of the house will just go down, collapse. Yes. So having the classical background for a composer, as far as I can see, is something like this. You can see the difference. Sometimes you have a quality in a composer that doesn't have a strong cultural background in classical training. Sometimes it works. You fix some technical problems, but it works. So, you are also willing to help. But sometimes you see that, it just has ideas. Maybe this happens with the youngest often. And he has ideas, but he doesn't know how to. He or she doesn't know how to communicate these ideas, and this doesn't work because it's you lose a lot of time, and you never achieve a result. You become the composer because you have to fix a lot of things. So in the end, yes, classical training for me is very, very important.
Also, in terms of monotony, I've seen people who have not studied enough. I'm not even using the term studied well. I'm just saying studied enough. Bare minimum that you must to be able to be a songwriter or a composer. I take in terms of fertile, the soil being fertile, which is able to generate at least one harvest in a year. Even if it is not too fertile, like one crop, like one tomato, for God's sake, a year. Every year, when you want, this 13th of March, I should have one tomato. That poverty, even if you are, accepting of that's it. That's the education I want. Versus those I see that who are like poets who generate poetry, one poem a month, one poem a week, a poem a day. I've got artist friends, painters, who would just get up in the morning at 3-4 like Siddharth and Prem Singh. It's just like their morning ritual. It's just like the romance of the day. They would pick up the paper, throw water, and pick up some colors and draw some lines. So in terms of fertility and variety, I have also seen that people who have studied seriously But not all musicians who've studied seriously are great composers. I've seen several of my own teachers who sang very well. One of my teachers, Ustad Faimuddin Khan, who was a practitioner of the Dagravani, he never composed. He said, why don't you, let's do something. I was a conversation. And I gave him about 5-6 texts. For years he sat on them. It just didn't occur. A line did not occur. Now, that's the next point. One point is that how, in terms of education, can help negotiate in terms of monotony, breaking monotony, repetitiveness, give you the tools to be creative. I was speaking to Luca Lombardi. He's created a scale which is not even bound by the idea of the octave, that on the 8th note, the octave repeats. He says, no, I don't want to do that. He goes beyond that. Now, that's extraordinary, eye-watering for me. Whereas the other side is that relates to the ones that it's not easy to compose, because let's say if I know in a melody, like if I have a raga, if I take the octave, it could be, the first composition could be beginning from the first note. Just the first line, and it has multiple lines in the chorus. So the strike is on the second note. Bhajaramo Ramamana Ram, Bhajaramo Mana Ram, Jisarupa Rekha Badam, Satsangad Mēlā Bhajaram, Bada Ho Bhagavatam. The same melody, same raga, same scale, but the stress is on the second note, third of the same. And I'm going back now, mid 16th century. Third quarter of the 16th century. The third note is emphasized now.
That's beautiful. The whole chorus comes back to the third note. In this raga, the fourth note is not emphasized, cannot be emphasized, because the raga will change. But then there comes the idea of the fifth note. So fifth note could be, a composition comes, for example, so the fifth, so this, for example, comes. Then there is another composition, very rare composition, which begins from the sixth. But then to break
it from going into stepping into another raga, it begins from, takes the slide from the first. This is late 1500s, like last decade of the 16th, fifth Guru Arjan. Say that again.
Sorry. This is written.
Now it is written. My granduncles wrote it, but it's come oral tradition for generations in my family. But authored by the protagonists, the Sikh gurus in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. This is the same rag I'm just sharing. So it goes Anād Vinod Hamara Then comes the last class in a way, if I may. I'll end this preamble here. After this, it would be from the seventh note. For example, 17 beats. Dhane dhane sohavi, dhane dhane sohavi, safal gadi. Dhane need 7, that one. Or another composition of the same kind. Sola ki singar ke anjana baje aji sola ki. Now, point I'm making is, when you have such variety of music composed over centuries, and we've got like tens of compositions in the same melody cycle, being an old memory a stream, a knowledge stream, we have a lot of references. How difficult it becomes to create a new composition. So there is a handicap when you are so educated, but then when you compose, that's a masterpiece already, because you have a memory, you have literature in your head, in your DNA, and then you find a way. Like one of my teachers said, this is how in this raga a stanza has evolved. Bhairavi, for example, is a melodic mode. All flats. So the novice stands out with so the third, fourth, 6, 7, 1, like that it goes. All flats. Now, again the same Ustad Faimuddin Khan, maestro Faimuddin Khan of the Dagarwan, he says, another composition goes, the stanza is different. He says, I want you to think of another stanza. I said, well, I already did, because my granduncle Bhai Avtar gave me the job. He says, how would you sing this? So I sang for him this one, for example. Yaar vinit sukh sukhendi sam pai. Yaar ve. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yaar vinit sukh sukhendi. Yaar vinit sukh sukhendi sam pai. no, this is the new passage of Bhairavi that somehow it occurred to me, and my elders were glad. Vare Lornida Aya Vaji Badhai Yaarve. Point I'm making is that the burden of heritage on your head has its own handicap. Either it will wreck you, or it will destroy your creative juices to flow. It will just tell them you just cannot. Like something like you said, you know what, I want to be a conductor. Not because I'm bad, but I'm not content. I'm like this. I've seen so many grand elders who have heritage. And one thing that they lost was their own capacity to create.
Yeah.
Then there are people who have as much, but their creative juices flow, and then you see the riches. Those are miracles. How do you see in the Western sense? It's something that's a tradition that intrigues me still. I cannot read a staff notation. I don't know from Bach to Beethoven to, Vivaldi and Paganini I can recognize from far. Maybe even, I can see some. I agree, but I don't know it. I've heard it some. But how do you see the idea of the tradition, the harvest of the tradition, harvested by some of the greatest minds that have been in Europe? That burden of heritage, what does it do to you?
It's like you said. It's exactly like you said. It's the same. When you create something, having a background, a strong background like yours in your field, you begin with a.
I think he has had a phone call. We'll have to wait until he does his ritual of either saying, I'm still chatting with BBS, and that I'll call you back later.
Hello.
Yeah, I was gossiping about you, what you would have done. Yes, hello.
Okay, now I'm back online.
Yes.
So I was offline. So the point is that you begin on a fertile soil. So of course it's much better. You're right also that the problem can be a problem that you can be enslaved by this tradition, by all the notions you have. But it's I don't know what creativity really is, and I don't know from what it does come from. Sometimes I remember I had a very good conversation with an important cellist some year ago, and we had, everybody has struggles in life, so we were talking about some bad moment in our lives, and we said, but you see, to be a musician, sometimes you need to suffer, no? And if you don't suffer, you seek to suffer. Which is strange, It's but somehow it's true. I mean, so maybe creativity comes from you are not satisfied with what you have for a reason or another, and you become creative because you want to impress your mark on reality in the end. So maybe it's about this, but this is not really related to education. I mean, if you are educated and you have this need to do something, you can achieve great results. So, but in the end, I don't know really. But I quitted composing because I found a lot of interesting music, and I like to improvise. At the time I was still playing the piano, so I liked to improvise. And I said, okay, why have to struggle to write when I can perform other people's music, which I know it's so meaningful. And I can perform my music just improvising. So that was my opinion at the time, and still now. I think there is a lot of very good music, and you recognize it if you have a culture and a sensibility. It's not only culture, because he said, well, when you have a great education, maybe you are arid. You just are like a library, no? And it's important, but libraries are not exactly what I want to be in my life. So,
I see.
And neither you, as far as I can see. I mean, maybe a living library is okay, but just a library is not interesting.
My granduncle said, if you so want to write books, by Arjun Singh Tarangad, my most important maestro, my eldest granduncle, he says, if you so dearly want to write books, learn how to write living books. I said, oh, that's fantastic. I said, oh, then for 2-3 minutes, I was like intoxicated. I said, oh, but granduncle, that's a fantastic idea, but how do you get to write living books? He says, yeah, now you ask the right question. If you so want to write living books, you must learn how to read living books. And I said, oh, fantastic. Oh, yeah, granduncle. Oh, maestro, this is fantastic. Again, 2-3 minutes later, I said, but... He says, oh, yeah, you have another question? I said, yeah, but where do I find the living books to read to be able to learn how to write living books so I may write living books? He says, oh, read living books? Oh, how are they like? Oh, like me, I'm one. He laughed and he clapped. I said, so yes, that's the idea, that you have to be a living book, not a dead book. A living book is a big book which has a lot of chapters already written, but then as many chapters there are, as many blank pages you beckon. They are tempting you. The ink is begging for you to pour it on the paper. The pen is praying that you hold. As Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Sikh Guru, one of his pen was called, Krishna, the idea of Krishna, Hare Krishna,
yes.
Krishna. So he had gopis, sure. Right? The chief, the head gopi is Radhika, is Radha, like Radha Krishna, and then Guru Gobind Singh would write as Gobind Das and his pen name, but his pen's name was Radhika. So that romance with the calligraphy pen, that the pen is like a gopi, like a playmate, it's that romance with the writer. I think that is where the key is, I think. But that possibility is only if you have those pages that are already written. If you have a blank book, you have to now reinvent a wheel. You will have to think of a note. That is where I talk to these quote-unquote modernists. I said, but then why are you then borrowing even the notes? Because they are part of a tradition too. If you don't want to learn or undergo education, then don't take the notes. Then create your own notes or the idea of notes and write theory. But that's again a naughty note. But
there is someone that did this in the Western classical music world with electronic music. When electronic music in the 70s or around came out, they really invented something different. But still, it's if you want to interest the cultural audience, you have to have a strong tie with the tradition. Otherwise, everybody will recognize that you don't have the solid ground. It's like a castle built on a cheap ground,
which doesn't have the density to hold the weight.
Yes, and you recognize it immediately. And I think that me and you in our field, we are professionals, so we also can say why and how it doesn't work. But I think that everyone, even the common listener, will recognize the difference between a quality composition and a quality from this point of view composition and a less quality one.
There is a question from one of my students. He says, I'm quoting, I'd love to hear Mr. Vitello talk about what he sees aesthetically as an interpreter of Schoenberg's atonality. He's from Maryland, United States.
Sorry, of what? Interpretation of what?
Schoenberg's atonality.
Okay. Well, so thank you for your question. You know, I one of my first recording, I start from this because it's very related to the question. It was the Pierrot Lunaire, which was one of the, you know, the first pieces by Schoenberg, which are they're not. It's not dodecaphonic, but it's early Schoenberg, so it's really atonality. Atonale. How you say in English? Atonale. Atonal. Yeah. Really atonal. Yeah. Atonal. So what I think that in this piece, like in, for example, in the Opus 19 or the George Lieder, which is I don't remember the Opus number, but it's this. You know, the early Schoenberg is not a romantic one, but it's the atonal one, which is not yet clearly one a bit dodecaphonic, because it wasn't dodecaphonic. I mean, Leibowitz was dodecaphonic. I mean, he wanted to be, but this question is quite complex. But I love these pieces because you see an urgency of communication, which is really, I mean, you can feel the pain, the struggle that they had to express something that wasn't at the time codified. So he reached this. Okay, we used to consider the second Viennese school like the arrive point of the great late Romantic tradition. It's like an extremization of the harmonic complexity of the Romantic tradition. True or not, I don't know, but it makes sense. No? But in the early Schoenberg, you can see really something that is that I love very much, which is crazy melodies, which are really difficult to sing, really difficult, almost unnatural, because, you know, he was saying that I hope that in the future every postino, the guy who brings the mails, will sing my melodies. Okay, this didn't happen, unfortunately, so it wasn't right. But still, is like, you know, like Beethoven, that at this time he wanted to fight with something bigger than him, because, you know, Beethoven really took the tree of the tradition and did like this with the tree of the tradition, especially with the late pieces. Schoenberg did this. So this is my opinion on, and I love the early Schoenberg very much. I love the atonal Schoenberg a lot. And I'm sorry, and you know, I perform it like a very, very romantic music. If you listen to my Pierrot Lunaire, what I try to do is to perform it like not in an objective way, but in a very romantic way, which is the way I think it was meant to be.
I see. I appreciate that. There is a question by Vibhuti Sachdev. I'm actually thanked her for that question because it's an important one which somehow gets missed in the cracks. She asks, what do you consider classical as classical music? Does it have a timeline? Is Baroque music classical? Thank you, Vibhuti, for that question.
Thank you. Well, from the historical point of view, classical is technically it's a music that goes from after the Baroque, technically also after the Rococo to the Biedermeier period. So it's a period between the 18th century, around the 18th century. So it's this is classical music technically from the historical point of view. Then from the style point of view, we call classical music it's a style, so it's related with the first Viennese school. So Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. This is it. Then when we talk with non-musicians, I have many friends which are not into music. When I talk with them, I have to say, when I say classical music, they just intend all the written music, more or less. I mean, all the, let's say, cultured music. So it's three-faced term.
I see. But it's also, the Baroque and Renaissance is also written in a way. But those that say written. Everything I mean, written, even if it's Renaissance, Baroque, it's also...
when you talk with...
They say that is also classical.
When you talk with yes, with the guys is not into this field, usually they don't see the difference,
Yes. Because technically, I mean, because I have followed a lot of Baroque and Renaissance period music, and I've worked now with the instruments, we see that there's a clear divide. I mean, the music is different, instruments are different as such, and handling. But that's good to, that's why I thought it was a wonderful question to actually have you address that.
But another thing that is interesting with the ancient, let's say ancient, but also Baroque and also classical music is that not everything was written. So we could open a very big window, but it's very late. But the point is, not everything was written, and we don't know exactly how they performed the things that were not written.
Yes.
With romantic music, we know better, much better. With 20th century, we have recordings, so we know exactly. This is also part of the mystery of the thing.
Yeah, but I think that's the exciting section as well. Can we now talk about the? In fact, Czeslaw Singh from Poznan in Poland, who's just shifted to London, who was in fact, Valerio and all of us, he loved Valerio's work, and Michele, I mean, everybody, he played the harpsichord, he's a pianist from the Paris conservatories. He says, that's right, you cannot do anything as a composer, conductor, musician without having a deep knowledge of what came before, is what even Czeslaw is sharing. Towards the last, you want to say something to that, just to respond to
I just say thank you. Thank you for the statement.
Towards the last segment, if I may, is to come again to the contemporary. In my region, in my part of the world, what I call as khichdi music is like a mixed pudding. Now people are taking one line and they would compose it in Drupad, the next line in a khayal, chota khayal, next line in a thumri, then come back to the Drupad, then go back to some other genre, then do tap khayal, etc. Do you see like what could be called as contamination of musical genres, where you cannot? There was a debate in I think 2001. It was the National Academy of Music, Dance and Drama. There was a seminar called Brahdeshi, and there was a debate at that time with a follower of a contemporary musician who was. The problem is not. I don't have a problem with them. I think anybody could compose the way they want. It's for it has its own age. If it is supposed to live on, it will live on, no matter what. If it is considered crap, nobody will bother until it is 200 years later, somebody might rediscover it. Or maybe that very musician will have to be reincarnate to be able to pick up, where's my book from 2 centuries ago? Anyway, the point I'm making is, I had to tell them that the problem is that you were saying that the tradition is no longer needed or it's not good enough, that what you're creating is either equal to tradition or even better than ancient music. That's where my problem was. But the question I asked them was, can you actually define what exactly is your music? Which genre it is? Because you're just taking one line from here, there and everywhere. Do you see this sort of contamination of musical genres happening in the West? And if yes, how do you take it? Is it a problem for you, or you're okay with it?
Oh, well, I'm okay with contamination. No, I'm always okay with contaminations usually, because, it's from contaminations life grows. So for me, it's always interesting.
Because contamination is one. The other is what I've used the term is cross-pollination between genres. It's a
cross-pollination is much better. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you intend contamination, but cross-pollination is maybe gives better the idea of what I
usually
mean when
don't
I say
speak because I don't want to give the tools to the people who are doing it. They're not doing it because of that. They're just doing it because they don't even know one genre well. Sometimes, but most times it is like that.
I understand, but you know what? The point is that in the year I think in the Western world, we have different styles. That was this minimalism. Now minimalism made a great spread it a lot in a lot of countries, and many composers are now more or less everyone cannot. Is history now, so you have to know it and to consider it. And it's interesting, if I may open a parenthesis, it's interesting to consider that minimalism have born in the United States, which is a country which is okay, comes from England and then Europe, but is a very, very virgin country from the cultural point of view. Experience like that could never grow in Europe, never. Because with this tradition, like you said before, our institutions are conservative. We are somehow oppressed by our tradition, which is normal because it's such a huge tradition. So it's not easy to find a way. Anyway, what I wanted to say, the style is something, the cross-pollination or contamination that can result in a style is something, but the individual is another thing. And I tend to see that when you have a strong individual, like, for example, we have Salvatore Scerrino, which is a composer that made his own school, because he wrote, like, now there is this Filidei, which is Francesco Filidei, which is a pupil of him, and for me, in many ways, he remembers him. But, he's the man. It's not the style. Like if you look at the past, you have Mozart, Beethoven, and Haydn. Okay, we recognize them as classical style, but there are huge differences between them. So it's the man, is the individual that makes the tradition. I don't know if this answers your question, but this is my idea.
Right. Who are your favorite? I mean, are there composers that you've really enjoyed conducting?
Well,
almost like as if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I may just add one line to my question, almost like the same ocean. No, in the end, it's music, but one day the water's like so inviting. It's like I was in my brother-in-law's boat, a 14 or 12 or whatever meter regatta class sailboat near in the Mediterranean. We were off Lipari and we were in the middle of nowhere. And then I loved that day. There was something with the light. I didn't say anything. I just jumped. The boat is going, we are sailing. I just jumped. He was afraid because I didn't know that area you have sharks. And he went around. He said, no, you have to come back up. I just went in. Maybe 2-3 meters, and I saw the pyramid of light. It was just extraordinary. It was just sometimes, is it something like that when you see as a conductor? Is the music and that occasion like that when it's are there like composers who are like that to you, that you just say, here I come? And you just
you know what? For me, I'm quite young as a conductor, so I didn't conduct all the masterpieces of the repertoire. There's a lot of music, really a lot of music. So what I can say is that when I study a new score and this is a masterpiece, for example, I love like crazy Brahms. I love Brahms symphonies a lot, and the time I studied Brahms first and second for the first time, it was really the most beautiful experience in my musical life. But then you go to study La Mer, and I love Debussy very much. So you study La Mer, you say, oh, I want to do this the rest of my life, just to say on this score. And also now I'm studying Copland, and also Copland has some very, very beautiful page. So it's very difficult to say. It may be seem political, but it's really the score that I'm studying that moment usually is the one that I love most, usually.
I see. It's like, anyway, it's the same ocean, but sometimes it can say, don't you come near me. Then it can also say, come, here you come. I'm waiting for you.
Yes, but it's but in every page of music, you can find in many pieces, you can find the pages that you love most. So our job is to render the whole piece. Yeah. But then you arrive at a certain point, and I remember this in the Saint Johannes cantata, Passion of Bach. There is an area which is Mache dich in welche Reich, qualcosa del genere. I don't remember exactly I don't speak German, so I don't remember exactly the words, but it's an area that every time I perform pieces from Bach cantatas, I put also this from the Passion, because I love, and every time I listen to that, I cry like a child, every time. So it's difficult when I conduct, because I have to be very concentrated. I don't know why. But it's a piece inside, a bigger piece.
I see. And what about conductors? Are there conductors that have sort of had you, that you were inspired by, and if yes, who and why?
Well, first of all, I was and I am inspired every time I conduct from my maestro, which is Donato Renzetti, which is an important Italian conductor. It's the only one that I really taught lessons of conducting only from him. Mm-hmm. So I learned everything good I know from him. So I'm very grateful. And every time, I call him and say, Maestro, may you give me a suggestion? And he say, you don't need suggestion anymore. Why you call me? So no, I need suggestions because, it's tradition and I always need suggestions. So this is the first. But then there are many, I loved very much Harnoncourt as a conductor, not as his gesture, because it's incomprehensible. It's not understandable by anyone. But the way he was doing music, well, for me, is great. And also, for some repertoire, Claudio Abbado. So these are the most, influencing to me.
Last couple of things. One is to do with some of the top, like Dominique and some of the top musicians from Europe that I've known. They have played their pieces over and over again. It's part of the DNA. Right? They don't need a score. The other day I was with, of course, Roberto also played. Then Jerzy Stryniak from New York, who's Polish, is the pianist. I mean, it's in there. As a conductor, you are like, it's not just your piece as a pianist or a cellist or a violinist. You're consuming the entire piece. Like if it's a 100-piece orchestra, it is written in your DNA. So many linears. How do you do it? How much? Because people can, be fooled by the idea that a musician has to work 8-9 hours a day, but then that musician is working only on his or her lines, whereas you are looking at every single point on the manuscript, on the music score. What do you think is the importance of memorizing thereof, and how is that experience when you have all of that inside? Or is it necessary, or you can just read it and do it? You can. I mean, I know that it's not possible to just read everything.
No, of course. But most of the repertoire you can read and do it. Somehow. The point is to really go in deep into a score. If you are a conductor or even a performer, a player, an instrumentalist or a singer or what else, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. The memory is just a part of this job. I must say I'm not very good with memory. And I don't like to conduct by heart, even when I know, because more or less, when you know very well a piece, you can conduct more or less by heart after a month you study a piece. Then you just have to fix a few points, and then you can I don't like this because I feel I can lose something that is important, which I don't know, maybe it's not, but for me it's like that. When you conduct by heart, okay, you have a different flow with the orchestra, but you can use this in certain places. Why not? I mean, so for me, I use the score always. Maybe I don't turn the pages. I just turn the pages after the movement if I don't want. But this is also the Linux cover. It's okay. The score is here. Something happens. I know what this is. And how to have everything in the mind. It's just a matter of time, because you study different lines one by one, then you put them together, and it's not different from studying a piece for an instrument. And it's, as I told you at the beginning, technically it's much easier. So it's more a mental effort. You have to, need time. But I told you, you are more like sometimes a sound designer. No, you have to. You have a very wide painting tavolozza. You say with the colors, it's very wide. If you play an oboe, you have a wide tavolozza, but it's just one. When you are a conductor, you have a wider tavolozza, and you can also go to the idea, platonically speaking, to the inner meaning of the thing. So it's easier, but it's also very delicate. But it's not more complex. I don't think it's more complex, because once you know the single lines, they are in an organic thing, so it becomes quite natural.
Right. Oh, thank you so much. I just have one crazy request now. We've done a lot of serious talk, I think. Can you, something that you like, can you, stand and conduct the ghosts of the world, the angels, into playing something celestial?
Well, no, what I can do is that I will close. I will give the attacco, and then close our beautiful conversation with my gesture, if you want. But you have to assist me, because I will be there. You told me when we began, you told me I am the conductor of the video, and you are, but now I will be the conductor of the video, if you agree. Is that okay for you?
You have to do some lying. Come on. Couple of 2, 3, 4 lines.
Like, how can I? I mean, what can I do?
Just think that I'm the mirror, and that you're in front of the mirror, right? As you prepare, because we've done, as part of the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series, I requested a couple of my, few of my friends who are the top dancers in India. They actually did the entire makeup on screen live. What is it to become the act from the actor, the dancer, when the dancer becomes that, the dance itself? So that transformation. So you undergo that when you prepare that. We began with that movie of yours, that Octat. It is that preparation, it is that meditation, that relentless coming back, finding that rhythm, your own rhythm. So it'll be, thematically, it'll be part of the Virtual Baithak Series. How do you prepare? It's just like, would be great if you can kindly oblige.
Listen, I will try to do something.
That'll be fantastic.
So, and I invite you and our audience to try to understand what I like we did in the small town. Yes. What I'm conducting, okay? But I will not tell you in the end. So let's see what happens.
You want to stand? You want to be comfortable standing up? You can do that if you would like.
No, because I cannot put my mobile too high.
No, you cannot. Just go back in a distance.
I will. This is enough. You can see my hands, so it will be enough if you can see my hands. Okay?
Yeah, it's little.
So this is
yes.
Is it too little?
Yeah. No, it's good.
This is a whole.
I will just remove myself from I'll remove myself from the video so that you have more space. Yes.
Okay. So you arrive on the podium, you see the audience, they clap you, the orchestra claps you. You bow to the audience, and then the lights go down, and everybody is waiting for you. You know that. The audience is waiting for you to do something. The orchestra is waiting for you to do something. The soloist, that can be a very important one, is waiting for you. What you do? That was.
was
Okay, this is actor, guy. This is the actor. This is the actor. Next time I invite you to a concert when you can listen to what I do, because it's much more interesting.
And I'll get my camera too.
Okay. Bye, Baldeep. It was a great pleasure for me to talk with you. You know, time passed without noticing. So I look at the sun because
17 minutes. Oh, I see. We've been conversing for some time. I didn't realize.
It was a great pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for taking time out. I hope it was not horrible for you, but it was very meaningful.
It was so beautiful.
Yeah. And I hope I'll talk to you soon and your wife very shortly. And thank you for sharing your thoughts and joining us today. Many of our
thank you.
Friends, some of the top artists, actors, Ramanjit and so many have joined and commented, and I hope that in your spare time you'll maybe visit some of the comments, and if there are any queries, it'll be great to have you respond to some if you've not already done that. Yeah. Otherwise,
no, I didn't. I beg your pardon of our audience, because I couldn't use Facebook in the meantime. I have Skype because the connection here is very low. But I will look at the comments for sure. And thank you everyone for listening to me.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye. Yeah. That was my conversation, friends, with Maestro Andrea Vitello. And I hope you all enjoyed that. It was very important for me. It was the first conductor that I have conversed with in this format. I've never interviewed a conductor. Even otherwise, I've interviewed so many musicians from both sides. I mean, from East and West. But a conductor was the first one. So I was unsure about the conversation. But you know, my conversations with him in the lead up to this conversation were very helpful. I learned about him, I read about him, and but then I had my own queries. I was very curious about what is it, this guy, and it was very moving. It was eye-watering how he prepared. You know, it's like as if you are waking up that one collective soul. You're merging, you're mixing the souls of all the all those musicians who have converged to be mashed together and create something beautiful. And then you have the listeners as one saying, "Wow, kya baat hai," that was wonderful, or say, "Oh, that wasn't good enough." I think that was fantastic for me to see. I hope it was meaningful for you guys too, and thank you all for joining. Dosto, meri varta si. I'll just say a couple of words before I wind up in Punjabi. Sathiyo, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋਗੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਬਾਰ-ਬਾਰ। ਕੁਝ ਬੜੀਆਂ ਮਹਿੰਗੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਅੰਦਰਿਆ ਵਿਤੈਲੋ ਕਰਕੇ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਔਰ ਉਹ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰੀ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆਪਾਂ, ਕਲਾਸਿਕੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੁੰਦੀ, ਕਲਾਸਿਕੀ ਮੌਸੀਕੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਕੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ। ਉਹਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ। ਉਹਨੇ ਇਹ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਤਾਲੀਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਅਤੀਤ ਦੀ, ਉਹ ਖੱਟ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵੰਜ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਪਾਰ ਸੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਘੜਤ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਵਾਂ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਗਰੀਬ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ। ਇਹ ਤੈਅ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਗਿਵਨ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਸ਼ੰਕਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਜਿੰਨਾ ਅਧੂਰਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਗਿਆਨ ਹੈ, ਜਿੰਨੀ ਅਧੂਰੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪਕੜ ਹੈ, ਸਮਝ ਹੈ, ਜਿੰਨਾ ਘੱਟ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੋ ਪਰੰਪਰਾ ਨੂੰ, ਪਾਰੰਪਰਿਕ ਗਿਆਨ ਨੂੰ, ਓਨਾ ਘੱਟ ਓਨੀ ਘੱਟ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਘੜਤ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਇਹ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਉਹਨੇ ਪ੍ਰਮਾਣ ਵੀ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਨੇ। ਉਹਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖਿਚੜੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੈ, ਕੀ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕੁਝ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਕ ਧਰੁਪਦ ਦੀ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਈ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ 'ਚ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਤਾਰਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਰਚਨਾਵਾਂ ਨੇ, ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਕਰਤਾਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਰਚਨਾਵਾਂ ਨੇ, ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਸੁਖਵੰਤ ਪ੍ਰਿੰਸੀਪਲ ਸੁਖਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀਆਂ ਰਚਨਾਵਾਂ ਨੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ ਖਿਚੜੀ ਟਾਈਪ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਕ ਧਰੁਪਦ ਦੀ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਖਿਆਲ ਦੀ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਦਾ ਅੰਗ ਆ ਗਿਆ, ਕਿਤੇ ਤਾਨ ਆ ਗਈ। ਇਹ ਬੜੀ ਮਹਿੰਗੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿ ਕੇ ਗਿਆ ਅੰਦਰਿਆ ਵਿਤੈਲੋ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਕਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਉਸਨੂੰ, ਇਹ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਕਿਉਂ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕਿਉਂ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਕ ਧਰੁਪਦ ਦੀ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕਿਉਂ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਕ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਦੀ ਹੋਵੇ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਕਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਬੜਾ ਅਹਿਮ ਸਵਾਲ ਸੀ। ਉਹਦਾ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਜੀਵਨ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਹਰ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰ ਦਾ ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰ ਹੈ ਉਹਦਾ ਹੱਕ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਵਿੱਚ, ਫਿਰ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਅੱਖਰ ਕੰਟੈਮੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਅੱਖਰ ਉਹਨੇ ਵਰਤਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਤੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਦਾਗ ਪਾ ਦੇਣਾ, ਇੱਕ ਜੇ ਧਰੁਪਦ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਦਾ ਦਾਗ ਪੈ ਜਾਣਾ, ਟੱਪੇ ਦਾ ਦਾਗ ਪੈ ਜਾਣਾ, ਜਾਂ ਖਿਆਲ ਦਾ ਦਾਗ ਪੈ ਜਾਣਾ, ਜਾਂ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਦਾ ਦਾਗ। ਕੱਲ ਮੇਰੀ ਫ੍ਰਾਂਚੈਸਕਾ ਕਾਸੀਓ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਸ਼ਾਗਿਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਕਿ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਦੋ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਸਾਇਰਾ ਬੇਗਮ ਦੀ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਿਓਰ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗਿਰਜਾ ਦੇਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਦੇਖੋਗੇ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਖਿਆਲ ਦਾ ਦਾਗ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਖਿਆਲ ਨੁਮਾ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਦੋਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨੇ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ। ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਗਾਉਂਦੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਗਾਉਂਦੇ। ਗਿਰਜਾ ਦੇਵੀ ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਇਰਾ ਬੇਗਮ ਇਹ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਗਾਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਸਾਇਰਾ ਬੇਗਮ ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਦੇਖਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਵਿਦੁਸ਼ੀ ਗਿਰਜਾ ਦੇਵੀ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਗਾਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕ੍ਰਾਸ ਪੋਲੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਬੀਜ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਬਾਗ ਚੋਂ ਦੂਜੇ ਬਾਗ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਬੀਜ ਉੜਦਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪੋਲਨ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਬਾਗ 'ਚ ਗਿਰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਪੌਦਾ, ਇੱਕ ਉਸ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਬਾਗ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਪੌਦਾ ਜਨਮਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਸੰਭਾਵਨਾ ਵੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਸਵਾਲ ਇਹੀ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਚੰਗਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਉਹ ਵਾਜਬ ਹੋਵੇ, ਉਹ ਤਰਤੀਬ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਹੋਵੇ। ਜੇ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਦੀ ਤੁਕ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਠੁਮਰੀ ਅੱਛੀ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਹੋਵੇ। ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਕ ਉਹਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ, ਬੜਾ ਅਹਿਮ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਰੀਬੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਿਆਨ ਦੀ, ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਿਖ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਘੱਟ ਕਿਸੇ ਇੱਕ ਵੰਨਗੀ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਧਰੁਪਦ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਘੱਟ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਖਿਆਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਘੱਟ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਠੁਮਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੰਨਾ, ਉਹ ਸਾਰਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੋਵਰਟੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਰੀਬੀ ਹੈ, ਕੰਗਾਲੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਕੰਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਿਖਦੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਇਹ ਸੰਭਵ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ, ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਜੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਲਾਈਨ ਜੇ ਫਿਲਮ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਲਿਖੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗੀਤ ਗਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਅੰਦਾਜ਼ ਹੈ, ਅਗਲਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੁਕ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਧਰੁਪਦਾਂਗੀ ਹੈ, ਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਤੇ ਮਾਰਗੀ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਰਦੇ, ਕਦੇ ਇੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਕਦੇ ਉੱਧਰ, ਇਹ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪੱਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਈ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਨਾਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋਣਾ ਤਾਂ ਸੰਭਾਵਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਦਾ ਪਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੱਟ ਸਕਦੇ। ਜੇ ਪ੍ਰਿੰਸੀਪਲ ਸੁਖਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਨੇ ਬੈਠਾ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਲਿਖ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਭਾਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਉਸਦੇ ਪਰ ਕੱਟਣ ਦੀ ਬਜਾਏ ਦੀ ਤਾਂ ਦੂਰ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪੰਗਾਂ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਪੰਗ ਕੱਢਣਾ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਹੋਵਾਂਗਾ। ਪੰਡਿਤ ਰਾਮ ਆਸ਼ਰੇ ਝਾ ਜੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਤੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਲਿਖ ਰਿਹਾ ਨਵੇਂ, ਉਹਦੀ ਵੀ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਹੱਕ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਆਨੰਦ ਮਾਣੀਏ ਜੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ। ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਅੱਡ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਰੋਤ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ। ਉਹ ਵੀ ਅੰਦਰਿਆ ਵਿਤੈਲੋ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੀ ਦੱਸਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਜੋ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਉਮਰ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ, ਵਜਾਇਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ, ਗਾਵਿਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ, ਸੁਣਿਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਤਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਸ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਸੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹਾਈ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਮਝ ਦੇ ਵਾਧੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਸਹਾਈ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਆਸ ਹੀ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਮੇਰੀ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਨੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਲਈ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖੂਬ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰੋ, ਵਿਦਵਾਨ ਬਣੋ, ਇਹ ਮੇਰੀ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਹੈ। ਵਿਦਵਾਨ ਬੰਦਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਖੂਹ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤੁਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਸੈਂਸ ਆਫ ਜਰਨੀ, ਇੱਕ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਤਾਂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਹੀ ਉਦਾਸੀ ਸੀ, ਉਦਾਸੀ ਹੋ ਤੁਰਿਆ, ਤੇ ਉਦਾਸੀ ਬਣਨਾ ਸਿੱਖੀਏ, ਪੈਂਡੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਰਨਾ ਸਿੱਖੀਏ, ਔਰ ਰਸਤੇ 'ਚ ਜੋ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਝੋਲੀ ਅੱਡ ਕੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਨਾ ਸਿੱਖੀਏ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਘੋਖਣਾ, ਉਹਦੀ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਦੀਖਿਆ ਪ੍ਰੀਖਿਆ, ਉਹਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੀਖਿਆ ਕਰਨੀ। ਜੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਚੰਗਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਮਹਿੰਗਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਏ, ਉਹਦਾ ਹਾਰ ਬਣਾਈਏ, ਆਪਣੇ ਰੂਹ ਦਾ ਹਾਰ ਬਣਾਈਏ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਆਪਣਾ ਫਰਜ਼ ਬਣਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੰਗਾਲ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਵਕਤੇ ਨਾ ਹੋਈਏ, ਕੰਗਾਲ ਕਰਤੇ ਨਾ ਹੋਈਏ, ਤੇ ਕੰਗਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਵਕਤੇ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ ਕਥਤੇ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੰਗਾਲੀ ਦਾ ਦਾਨ ਦੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਅਮੀਰ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ ਸਰੋਤ ਅਮੀਰ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਮੇਰੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਾਓਗੇ ਮਹਿੰਗੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੇ ਸੁਣਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਨ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜ਼ਹਿਨ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਰੂਹਾਂ ਮਹਿੰਗੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ। ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਰੂਹਾਂ ਮਹਿੰਗੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਵਤਨ ਵੀ ਡਾਰ ਦਿੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦਾ ਤਬਾਹ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੀਆਂ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਇਕੋਲੋਜੀ ਵਿਦਨ ਐਂਡ ਇਕੋਲੋਜੀ ਵਿਦਾਊਟ, ਇਹ ਬੜੀਆਂ ਰਿਲੇਟਡ ਨੇ। ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਕੋਲੋਜੀ ਵਿਦਾਊਟ ਇਜ਼ ਦ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਦ ਇਕੋਲੋਜੀ ਵਿਦਨ। ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਵਾਤਾਵਰਣ ਅੰਦਰ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਲਟੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਉਸੇ ਦੀ, ਜਾਂ ਜੋ ਬਸੰਤ ਅੰਦਰ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਖੋਲ੍ਹਦੇ ਹੋ, ਕਰ ਖੋਲ੍ਹਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਸੰਤ ਬਾਹਰ ਫੈਲਾ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ। ਬਸ ਇਹ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਹੱਥ ਹੈ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਹੱਥ ਹੈ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਅੱਛਾ ਕਰੋਗੇ। ਮੈਂ ਆਗਿਆ ਲੈਣਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ 26 ਜੁਲਾਈ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਰੋਜ਼ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਰੀਏ ਹੁਣ ਬੈਠਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਜੋ ਸਿਲਸਿਲਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਇਤੀ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਸ਼ੁੱਕਰ ਸ਼ਨੀਚਰ ਐਤਵਾਰ ਮੈਂ ਜਾਵਾਂਗਾ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਮੇਰੀ ਚੰਦ ਘੰਟਿਆਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ ਭਾਈ ਮੋਹਿੰਦਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ, ਭਾਈ ਪ੍ਰਿਥੀਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੀਰ, ਭਾਈ ਭੁਪਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਪਾਰਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਹਿਊਸਟਨ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਮੇਰਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਤਾਂ ਦਹਾਕੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ, ਸਾਡਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੈ, ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਵੀਰ ਨੇ। ਸਾਡੇ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਿਆ, ਰਜ ਰਜ ਸੁਣਿਆ। ਸ਼ੁੱਕਰਵਾਰ ਸ਼ਾਮੀ 8 ਵਜੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਨਗੇ। ਆਪਾਂ ਭਾਈ ਜੱਸਾ ਪਾਲਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਹੈ ਇਹ, ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ੁੱਕਰਵਾਰ ਸ਼ਾਮੀ ਨੋਟ ਕਰ ਲੈਣਾ। ਸ਼ਨੀਚਰਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ। ਅਮਿਤ ਮਹਿਰਾ ਫੋਟੋਗ੍ਰਾਫਰ ਹਨਗੇ, ਉਹ ਸ਼ਾਮੀ ਹੋਣਗੇ। ਔਰ ਸਵੇਰੇ ਮਮਤਾ ਸਾਗਰ ਕਵੀ ਹਨਗੇ। ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ 4-5 ਕਵੀ ਸਾਊਥ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ, ਕੰਨੜਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਤੇਲਗੂ ਵਿੱਚ, ਮਲਿਆਲਮ ਵਿੱਚ, ਇਹ ਕੁਝ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਵੀ ਹੋਣਗੇ ਸੈਟਰਡੇ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ, ਸ਼ਨੀਚਰਵਾਰ ਸਵੇਰੇ। ਔਰ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸ ਦੇਵਾਂਗਾ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ 'ਚ। ਅਤੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਲਿਖ ਰਿਹਾ, ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਪ੍ਰਾਚੀਨ ਕੀਰਤੀਮਾਲਾ, ਇਹਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੂਫ ਰੀਡ ਮਾਈ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਬੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਆਈ ਨੋ ਲੋਂਗਰ ਦ ਡੀਨ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੂਫ ਰੀਡ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਹੀਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਦੇ ਹਨਗੇ। ਸੋ ਆਈ ਹੈਵ ਟੂ ਨਾਓ ਮਾਰਕ some of the I'll be starting now back to the music part. For example, this, as you see, are the corrections that they have marked in the texts. ਤੇ ਇਹ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਕੱਲ ਤੋਂ ਕੀ ਅੱਜ ਰਾਤ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਦਾਂ। Look at this composition which was there. ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ, ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ, ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ, ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ, ਤੇਰੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਕਮਾਈ, ਤੇਰੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਕਮਾਈ, ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ, ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ। This is a composition which I showed you ਕਿ ਬਾਬੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਸਿੱਧੀ ਗੋਸ਼ਟੀ, ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸਾਂਤ ਸਿੱਧਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਈ, ਜਿਨ ਮੇਲਾ ਸਿਵਰਾਤ ਦਾ ਖਟ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਆਦੇਸ਼ ਕਰਾਏ, ਸਿੱਧੀ ਬੋਲੇ ਸੁਭ ਬਚਨ, ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ ਤੇਰੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਕਮਾਈ, ਸਿੱਧ ਬੋਲਣ ਸੁਭ ਬਚਨ ਕਿ ਧੰਨ ਨਾਨਕ ਤੇਰੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਕਮਾਈ, ਵੱਡਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਪ੍ਰਗਟਿਆ, ਕਲਯੁਗ ਅੰਦਰ ਹੀ ਜੋਤ ਜਗਾਈ, ਮਿਲਿਓ ਬਾਬਾ ਉੱਠਿਆ, ਮੁਲਤਾਨੇ ਦੀ ਜਾਰਤ ਕਰਾ ਜਾਈ, ਅੱਗੇ ਪੀਰ ਮੁਲਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਦੁੱਧੀ ਕਟੋਰਾ ਭਰੀ ਲੈ ਆਈ, ਬਾਬੇ ਕੱਢ ਕਰ ਬਗਲ ਤੇ ਚੰਬੇਲੀ ਦੁੱਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਿਲਾਈ, ਜਿਉ ਸਾਗਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੰਗ ਸਮਾਈ। It's a composition by Gurdas which recounts that when the Peer placed the milk-filled jar, that there's enough knowledge in the world. Who are you? We don't need you anymore. We are just filled up. And he placed that petal on top. He says, Chambeli dodh vich milai. The chameli, the jasmine, flour he placed on top of the milk, and the milk did not overflow. It was not burdened. And it was as if the Ganges had merged into the ocean, as Bhai Gurdas says. So I think it was just a random page I opened, and look, this series is dedicated to Gurū Nānak, and we say, hey Gurū Nānak, you know, we hail you. We are so grateful for you because we've learned the idea of acceptance of diversity, that actually all men, women, and Jeev Jant, all life forms on the planet, not just men, are created equal, and we are done by the same doer, and therefore we must be accepting of each other, irrespective of the languages we speak, the colors that we wear, the attires that we adorn, the music systems and knowledge streams that we adhere to, religions that we think we follow. Well, we think we follow. Ask the religions. They'll tell you, oh, we don't really have any follower today. Bitter truth, people. And I'll miss you too, Gurpreet says. I'll miss you during the week. Well, yeah. But you never know. I might come back with my COVID-19 updates. It's been, what, 3 months or maybe 2 months. I've not spoken on coronavirus. I've been keeping a tag, by the way. And but anyway, we'll see. Until Friday otherwise for the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series. But it's not a rule. If I have one protagonist who says I'm not available on the weekend, you will see me come knocking on your door, waking you up. Hey, wake up, people. Listen in, tune in. But I hope you will continue to, you will get a chance to look back on some of the recordings. But we'll continue this journey. This journey has become very precious. It began precious for me. I know it's becoming precious for you too. As Bandeep was asking me, oh, what do you think? This has become larger than you. Well, as I told him, it was born larger than me. I was just the person in awe of what was about to transpire. You see, I work in prospect. This time too, as I always say, you are never right. I am never wrong. And you see, this is another proof. On my own, I'm clapping my own self-pat because you can't reach my hand. So here, bravo, bravo, shabash putter. Anyway, people, celebrate life. This is precious. This life is precious. This planet is precious. Take care of it. Love your family, and sort of work on yourself. As it says, Ki nori sagal singar, tajori sagal bekar, like that. And if I may, I read some of I'll be addressing with my students, with Sukhwinder Pinky, there was a case. I might actually address it in a separate video, maybe in the next 2-3 days. Some people from the Namdhari Darbar have questioned that I lacked etiquette in calling out the bluff. Basically, my question is that people who have anointed Zakir, for example, as if he's the Khalifa of the Punjab Bhaj, they are the ones who lacked etiquette, because the silsila's histories have an etiquette. It's as if somebody was to be anointed as the guru of the same faith that one follows. Would that be not lacking etiquette? So I am the one who's calling the bluff on etiquette. You don't get to question me. I'm the Parampara Mukhi. You are not Parampara Mukhis. And if there is to be a debate, bring your Parampara Mukhi and we will have a conversation. Do not speak above your pay grade. And if a senior scolds, you must listen to that scold. You must look at the reason why that scold has occurred. What did you do wrong that someone had to break his or her silence? If I have broken silence, which means you must have done something that has troubled not just me, but the legacy of the greats that have contributed to the bloom of the idea that was Punjab. So speak but only after thinking very carefully, considering all the facts and figures. Just because you've done something does not make it right. And you should have the courage to accept that you have been caught off guard, that something that you did, in being a little over romantic, in being over dramatic, that you caused, as Guru Tegh Bahadur says, nar achet paap te dar re. You have done a paap in achetna. That is what I'm telling you. I'm not saying you did it deliberately. But then you should have known better, because you knew that there are still parampara mukhis, that there are still parampara bearers who have served the orchard of Guru Nanak from the times of Guru Nanak. And they know their histories. And you cannot fool them with your new sense of history. So speak, feel free to speak, but study before you speak. Because people know, there are people who know better. There are people who know more than you do, is what I'll say, today. But maybe somebody from my office or somebody from my studentship will address that as well. But I thought it is only dignified that I address as much. There are, unfortunately, hierarchies, even if we've lost the sense of hierarchy, and hierarchy in a political sense may be bad, or in bad sense may be bad. But when it comes to knowledge and knowledge keeping, safekeeping memories and knowledge systems, it is important that people who have undergone the entire pedagogical process have over centuries been entrusted the baton to safekeep and safekeep the memory and the harvest, the intangible assets, intangible heritage and assets therein. So it's a more complex issue, people, than you think. And if I'm saying something, think over it before you are troubled, before a knee-jerk reaction. Because who cares about a knee-jerk reaction? Because what has been said very responsibly. And you cannot make an irresponsible reaction to that. My love and prayers for all of you. But my prayers for you includes that you learn to be naughty some, to be spicy some, to be happy some, and to be playful some. Satkartar, Khuda Hafiz, Shubhratri, good night, Buona Notte, Buona Serata, wherever you are. Until our next YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series 108, which will be most probably on Friday, with Bhai Baldeep Singh Paras.